The night Aria DeLuca's world shattered, she stood face to face with the most dangerous man in the city, and he saw straight through her. Welcome to a story of forbidden love, ruthless power, and choices that could destroy everything. When a brilliant young doctor returns home drowning in grief, she never expected to catch the eye of Victor Romano, a crime boss who answers to no one. What begins as protection becomes obsession. What starts as resistance ignites into passion. And when their worlds collide, blood will be spilled, empires will tremble, and love will demand the ultimate price. If you're ready for a story that will grip you until the very end, stay with me. Drop a like, comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels, and let's begin. The crystal chandelier above the ballroom cast fractured light across faces Aria DeLuca no longer recognized. She stood near the marble staircase in a black dress that felt like a shroud, watching strangers toast to a woman they'd never truly known. Her grandmother's memorial gala had transformed the DeLuca estate into a theater of performance, all polished smiles and hollow condolences, each word as rehearsed as the classical music drifting through the halls. Aria's fingers tightened around her champagne flute until her knuckles went white. 3 weeks. It had been 3 weeks since she'd returned from London, summoned home by a phone call that had stopped her heart. 3 weeks since she'd stood at her grandmother's grave, the only person who'd ever let her breathe freely in this suffocating world of power and pretense. Now she was back in the cage she'd spent years escaping, surrounded by people who spoke in code and measured their words like currency. "Aria, darling." Her mother, Catherine DeLuca, materialized beside her with the predatory grace of someone who'd spent decades navigating these shark-infested waters. She looked immaculate as always, silver dress, diamond earrings, not a hair out of place. "You've been hiding in the corner all evening. People are asking for you. Let them ask." Aria's voice came out sharper than intended. Catherine's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "This is not the time for your rebellious phase. These people didn't know her," Aria interrupted, her throat tight. "Half of them are here for the networking opportunities. The other half are vultures picking at what's left of her legacy." "Lower your voice." Catherine's smile never wavered, but her grip on Aria's arm was steel. "You may have spent the last 5 years playing doctor in London, but you're home now. You have responsibilities. Appearances matter." Aria wanted to laugh, or scream, maybe both. Instead, she pulled away gently, setting her untouched champagne on a passing waiter's tray. "I need air." She didn't wait for permission. The crowd parted as she moved through it, a sea of designer suits and practiced sympathy. Someone touched her shoulder, a business associate of her father's, she thought, murmuring something about loss and family. Aria nodded without hearing, her vision tunneling toward the tall French doors leading to the terrace. Almost there. "Dr. DeLuca." A younger man stepped into her path, smile too eager, eyes too calculating. Alessandro something. Her mother had tried to introduce them earlier. "I was hoping we could talk about—" "Not now." She sidestepped him and kept walking. The night air hit her face like salvation. The terrace stretched wide and empty, overlooking the estate's manicured gardens and the glittering cityscape beyond. Aria crossed to the stone balustrade, gripping it with both hands as she finally let herself feel the weight pressing down on her chest. Her grandmother's voice echoed in memory. "You have a wild heart, little one. Don't let them tame it." But the wild heart was breaking. Aria closed her eyes, letting the cool October wind tangle in her hair. She'd thought 5 years away would be enough. Thought that building a life in London, a career, independence, distance, would somehow make coming back easier. But grief had a way of stripping away carefully constructed defenses, leaving raw truth exposed. She didn't belong here. She never had. "Running away from your own party?" The voice came from behind her, deep, measured, carrying an authority that made the air shift. Aria's spine straightened instinctively before she turned. The man standing near the terrace doors shouldn't have been there. Everything about him screamed danger, from the perfectly tailored black suit that couldn't quite hide the predatory power beneath, to the silver threading his dark hair at the temples, to the eyes that held decades of secrets and violence. Victor Romano. She knew who he was. Everyone did. Even from London, she'd heard the whispers. The name spoken with equal parts fear and respect. The man who controlled the city's underworld with an iron fist wrapped in silk gloves. The ghost who moved through legitimate business and criminal empire alike, untouchable by law or rivals. And he was looking at her with an intensity that made her pulse spike. "I wasn't aware you were invited," Aria said, proud that her voice came out steady. "Your mother extended the invitation personally." Victor moved closer with the fluid grace of someone who'd never questioned his right to any space he occupied. "Though I suspect she's regretting it now, seeing as her daughter fled the moment things got uncomfortable." "I didn't flee." Aria lifted her chin. "I stepped out for air. There's a difference." "Is there?" He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the faint lines around his eyes, the small scar near his left temple. Up close, he was even more imposing, broad shoulders, presence that seemed to take up more space than physics allowed. "You looked like a caged animal in there." The observation was too accurate, too knowing. "And you looked like a wolf among sheep," she countered, "so I suppose we're both out of place." Something flickered in his expression, surprise, maybe, or amusement. People probably didn't talk to Victor Romano like that. But Aria was too raw, too exhausted to care about self-preservation. "I knew your grandmother," he said, and the gentleness in his tone caught her off guard. She was a remarkable woman. Aria's defenses cracked slightly. "You knew her?" "We served on a hospital charity board together, years ago." Victor's gaze drifted to the city lights beyond. She had no patience for politics or pretense, spoke her mind regardless of who it offended. I respected that. Despite herself, Aria felt a small, sad smile tug at her lips. "That sounds like her." "She spoke of you often. Her granddaughter, the doctor, said you had her fire." His eyes returned to hers, and Aria felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. She was very proud. The kindness in his words was unexpected, dangerous in a different way than his reputation. Aria felt her throat tighten, the grief she'd been holding back threatening to break through. She was the only one who understood, Aria heard herself say, the words escaping before she could stop them. Everyone else wanted to mold me into something useful, something appropriate. But she just let me be. And now she's gone, and they're circling again. It wasn't a question. Victor saw too much, understood too quickly. Aria wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite her coat. "My mother has already planned out the next 5 years of my life," she admitted, not sure why she was telling this stranger, this dangerous stranger, any of this. "Which hospital I'll work at, which boards I'll join, which suitable young men I should consider dating, as if I'm a chess piece to be positioned for maximum advantage. Are you going to let her?" The question hung in the air between them, simple but loaded with implication. Aria turned to face him fully. "I spent 5 years building a life away from all this. I'm not going to throw it away just because—" She stopped, her voice breaking slightly. "Just because the person who gave you permission to leave is no longer here to support that choice," Victor finished quietly. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Victor was silent for a long moment, studying her with those unsettlingly perceptive eyes. "You know what I do," he said finally. "You know what I am. Everyone knows what you are. Then you know I don't give advice often, and I certainly don't concern myself with the personal struggles of women I've just met on terraces." He paused. "But your grandmother was one of the few people in this city I genuinely respected. So I'll tell you what I told her once, when she was facing pressure to compromise her principles. The people who demand you sacrifice your truth for their comfort will never be satisfied. Give them an inch, they'll take everything." Aria absorbed his words, feeling them resonate in her chest. "And what did she say?" "She told me to go to hell because she didn't need life advice from a criminal." The corner of Victor's mouth lifted slightly. Then she ignored every piece of pressure and did exactly what she believed was right. "That's why I respected her." This time Aria's laugh was genuine, if watery. She could absolutely picture her grandmother saying that. "Dr. DeLuca." A new voice cut through the moment, sharp, urgent. Marco, one of her father's security team, appeared in the doorway. His eyes widened slightly when he saw Victor, and Aria caught the subtle shift in his posture. Fear or respect or both. "Your mother is asking for you. There are people she wants you to meet." Of course there were. Aria glanced back at Victor, feeling strangely reluctant to end this unexpected conversation. "I should go play your part," Victor finished. "For now." Something in the way he said it made her pause, as if he knew something she didn't, as if this was the beginning of something rather than the end. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for what you said about my grandmother. It means more than you know." Victor nodded once, and Aria felt his gaze follow her as she walked back toward the light and noise and suffocating expectations of the ballroom. She didn't look back. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of forced smiles and strategic conversations. Her mother paraded her through the crowd like a prized asset, introducing her to hospital administrators, business partners, and several unmarried sons of powerful families. Each conversation felt like a negotiation, every handshake a potential transaction. Aria played her part. She smiled at the right moments, said the appropriate things, projected the image of the dutiful daughter returned home to fulfill her destiny. But inside, Victor's words kept circling. "The people who demand you sacrifice your truth for their comfort will never be satisfied." By 11 o'clock, the crowd had thinned. Aria finally escaped to the library, a quiet sanctuary filled with her grandmother's books and memories. She collapsed into the leather chair by the fireplace, kicking off her heels with a groan. The door opened softly. "I thought I'd find you here." Her father, Marcus DeLuca, entered with 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed her one and settled into the opposite chair with a heavy sigh. Unlike her mother's polished perfection, Marcus looked tired, his tie loosened, his silver hair disheveled. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping expensive liquor and staring at the dying embers in the fireplace. "Your mother means well," Marcus said finally. Aria snorted. "Does she?" "In her own way." He swirled his whiskey thoughtfully. "She sees the world as a battlefield. Every connection, every relationship, strategic positions to be defended or exploited. It's how she was raised, how she survived." "I'm not her," Aria said quietly. "No, you're more like your grandmother." Marcus smiled sadly. "That terrifies Catherine more than she'll ever admit." Aria looked at her father, really looked at him, and saw the weariness there. Marcus DeLuca had built a legitimate empire from his family's questionable foundations, transforming old money into new power through real estate and investments. But the price had been high. His marriage to Catherine was more partnership than love, his life more obligation than choice. "Did you ever want something different?" Aria asked. "Or did you always know you'd end up here?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I wanted to be a history teacher," he said, and the admission seemed to surprise even him. Can you imagine? Marcus DeLuca teaching high school students about ancient Rome and the fall of empires? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My father found out and destroyed every application I'd submitted. Told me DeLucas don't teach. They rule." Aria's chest tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want you to wake up 30 years from now, sitting in a chair, drinking expensive whiskey, and wondering where your life went." He met her eyes. "Your grandmother fought for her choices. I didn't. I let duty and fear make my decisions, and I've regretted it every single day." "Mom will never let me leave again," Aria whispered. "Then don't ask for permission." Marcus leaned forward. "You're 28 years old, Aria. A brilliant doctor with your own money, your own achievements. The only person who can cage you is yourself." Before Aria could respond, the library door burst open. Her mother stood in the doorway, face tight with barely controlled fury. "We need to talk, now." Her eyes flicked to Marcus. "Alone." Marcus squeezed Aria's shoulder once before standing. "Remember what I said, sweetheart." He left, closing the door behind him. Catherine remained standing, hands clasped in front of her, the picture of controlled rage. "Victor Romano." Aria's pulse quickened. "What about him?" "I saw you on the terrace, talking with him, alone." Catherine's voice was ice. "Do you have any idea what kind of man he is? What associating with him could mean for this family's reputation?" "We had a conversation, Mother, that's all." "That's all?" Catherine crossed the room in 3 sharp strides. "Victor Romano doesn't have conversations, Aria. He collects information. He identifies weaknesses. And apparently you were foolish enough to give him access to yours." Aria stood, anger finally overriding exhaustion. "He knew grandmother. He spoke kindly about her. What exactly is the crime in that?" The crime is that you're so naive you don't recognize when you're being played. Catherine's composure cracked slightly. That man is dangerous. He's built an empire on violence and fear. The only reason he's tolerated in polite society is because people are too terrified to exclude him. Then why did you invite him? The question landed like a slap. Catherine's jaw tightened. Because sometimes we make strategic alliances with people we wouldn't normally associate with. But there's a difference between a carefully managed professional relationship and my daughter having intimate conversations with a man who could destroy everything we've built. I'm not you, Aria said, echoing her earlier words to her father. I don't see every human interaction as a potential threat or opportunity. He was kind to me on a difficult night, that's all. Kind, Catherine laughed bitterly. Men like Victor Romano are never kind without reason. Whatever he said to you, whatever connection you think you felt, it was calculated. He saw a grieving young woman and identified an opening. An opening to what? I don't know yet. But I will not allow you to be used as a pawn in whatever game he's playing. Catherine's voice turned sharp, final. You will not speak to him again. You will not seek him out. And if he approaches you, you will politely but firmly end the conversation. Am I clear? Something in Aria snapped. No. Catherine blinked. Excuse me? I said no, Mother. I'm not a child you can order around. And I'm certainly not going to let you dictate who I can and cannot speak with based on your paranoid calculations. This is not paranoia, Aria. This is reality. This is survival in a world you clearly don't understand after spending 5 years playing doctor in London. Playing doctor? Aria's voice rose. I saved lives, Mother. I built a career on my own merit, not family connections. And I came home because grandmother died, not because I wanted to be pulled back into this toxic world of yours. This toxic world, Catherine said coldly, is the world that paid for your education, your apartment in London, your comfortable life. You may want to pretend you're separate from all this, but you're not. You're a DeLuca. And that comes with responsibilities you can't just abandon when they become inconvenient. The words hit harder than Aria expected, because they were partially true. She had taken the family money, used the connections, benefited from the DeLuca name even as she tried to distance herself from it. I know what I owe this family, Aria said quietly, but I also know I can't live my life according to your fears. Then you're a fool. Catherine moved to the door, her back rigid. But you're my fool, which is why I've arranged protection for you. Aria's stomach dropped. What? Starting tomorrow, you'll have a security detail. Someone to ensure you don't make any more poor decisions while you're in this vulnerable state. You can't be serious. I'm always serious, darling, especially about protecting my family, even from themselves. Catherine paused in the doorway. Your grandmother may have encouraged your wild heart, but she's not here anymore. And in her absence, you'll learn to navigate this world properly, whether you like it or not. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a prison cell locking. Aria stood frozen in the center of the library, her grandmother's books surrounding her like silent witnesses. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing thinner. She thought about her father's confession, his lost dreams and lifetime of regret. She thought about her mother's iron control, the way Catherine turned everything, even love, into strategy. And she thought about Victor Romano's words. Give them an inch. They'll take everything. Aria grabbed her phone and coat, moving with sudden determination. If her mother wanted to cage her, wanted to assign guards and dictate her every move, then she was going to take one last night of freedom before the bars closed completely. She knew exactly where she was going. The Velvet Room occupied the top floor of the Meridian Hotel, accessible only to those with the right connections or enough money to buy them. Aria had been there once before, years ago, when she was younger and more reckless. She remembered the opulent darkness of it, all black leather and amber lighting, and the kind of secrecy that made people shed their public personas. The elevator doors opened to reveal a hostess with sharp eyes and sharper cheekbones. Members only, she said automatically. Aria pulled out the black card her grandmother had given her on her 21st birthday. I believe this will suffice. The hostess's expression shifted immediately. Of course, Ms. DeLuca. Welcome back. She gestured toward the main room. May I get you anything? Just privacy. The club was less crowded than Aria remembered, but it was a Tuesday night. Small clusters of beautiful people occupied velvet booths, their conversations muted beneath the sultry jazz piano. Aria made her way to the bar, acutely aware of the attention her arrival had drawn. Let them look. Let word get back to her mother. She was done performing. Whiskey. Neat. Aria settled onto a leather bar stool, her black dress riding up slightly. She didn't adjust it. The bartender, a woman with platinum hair and tattoos snaking up both arms, poured a generous measure of amber liquid. Rough night? You have no idea. I've worked here 6 years, honey. I've seen every kind of rough night there is. She slid the glass across. This one's on the house. You look like you need it. Aria raised the glass in a mock toast before downing half of it in one burning swallow. The alcohol hit her empty stomach like fire, and she welcomed it. Anything to drown out the echo of her mother's voice, the weight of expectations, the suffocating pressure of being a DeLuca. Another. By the third glass, the edges of the world had softened pleasantly. The music seemed louder, the lighting warmer. Aria felt herself relaxing for the first time in weeks, her shoulders dropping from their defensive hunch. You're going to regret that tomorrow. She turned to find a man beside her, late 30s, expensive suit, confident smile. Not unattractive, but trying too hard. I regret a lot of things. What's one more? He laughed, leaning closer. I like a woman who knows what she wants. I'm not interested, Aria interrupted smoothly. But thank you for the thought. His smile faltered. Come on, don't be like that. I'm just trying to... She said no. A new voice cut through, low and authoritative. Move along. The man's face went pale as he registered whoever was standing behind Aria. He mumbled something incoherent and disappeared into the crowd with remarkable speed. Aria closed her eyes, knowing exactly who she'd find when she turned around. Victor Romano settled onto the bar stool beside her, signaling the bartender with a subtle gesture. He looked different here, his jacket removed, tie loosened, the harsh lines of his face softened slightly by the amber lighting. But the power remained, radiating from him like heat. You're following me now? Aria asked, proud that her words only slurred slightly. I own this establishment, Victor replied calmly. Hard to follow someone to my own club. Of course you do. Aria laughed bitterly. Is there anything in this city you don't control? Many things. His whiskey arrived, and he took a measured sip, including, apparently, you. No one controls me. No? Victor's eyes tracked to her empty glasses. Then what are you running from? I'm not running. I'm celebrating my last night of freedom before my mother locks me in a tower and throws away the key. Aria reached for her glass, but Victor's hand intercepted hers gently. I think you've had enough. She yanked her hand back. Don't tell me what to do. I get enough of that from... Her voice broke slightly. From everyone. Victor studied her with that unsettling perception, seeing far too much. What happened after you went back inside? Why do you care? The question came out more desperate than defiant. Why does Victor Romano, the untouchable king of this city, give a damn about one grieving doctor's personal drama? I don't know, he admitted, and the honesty in his voice made her look up. I should have let you walk away on that terrace. Should have forgotten our conversation the moment you left. But I didn't. And when my head of security informed me that Catherine DeLuca's daughter was here, drinking alone and drawing attention, He paused. I came to see for myself. Well, congratulations. You've seen me, Aria DeLuca, in all her messy, rebellious glory. Are you satisfied? No. The single word hung heavy between them. Tell me what happened. Maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the way Victor was looking at her, not with judgment or calculation, but with something that almost looked like concern. So Aria told him. She told him about her mother's ultimatum, the security detail, the suffocating expectations, about her father's confession and lifetime of regret, about feeling trapped in a life she'd spent years escaping, surrounded by people who saw her as a piece on a board rather than a person. Victor listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. And the worst part, Aria finished, her voice breaking slightly, is that part of me wonders if my mother is right. If I am being naive, thinking I can just opt out of all this. If coming home was a mistake I can't undo. Your mother, Victor said carefully, sees threats everywhere because she spent her life creating them. That's her truth, not yours. You sound like my grandmother. I'll take that as the highest compliment. He flagged down the bartender. Water and something to eat. I'm not hungry. You're drunk on an empty stomach and making decisions you'll regret. Humor me. The food arrived, small plates of expensive things Aria didn't taste. But Victor was right. Eating helped. The world stopped spinning quite so dramatically. Your mother mentioned security, Victor said after a while. Who did she assign? I don't know. She didn't say. Some babysitter to make sure I don't embarrass the family or make poor decisions. Aria made air quotes, her coordination still slightly off. Victor was quiet for a long moment. What if I told you I could prevent that? Aria blinked at him. What? Your mother hired someone to watch you, to control your movements, report back, keep you in line. His eyes met hers. What if that person answered to me instead? I don't understand. Your mother wants you protected. She wants someone with the skills and connections to keep you safe in a world she sees as dangerous. Victor's voice dropped lower. I can provide that. But unlike whoever she's hiring, my people have loyalties she can't buy or threaten. They answer only to me. Aria's brain struggled to process what he was suggesting. You want to, what? Assign one of your people to babysit me? I want to ensure that when your mother inevitably tries to manipulate your security detail into spying on you, she fails. That when she uses them to restrict your freedom, they instead protect it. He leaned closer. I'm offering you a guard who will actually guard you, not cage you. Why would you do that? You barely know me. Victor's expression shifted, something crossing his features that Aria couldn't quite read. Because your grandmother was one of the few people in this city who treated me like a human being instead of a useful monster. Because I watched you on that terrace, fighting to breathe under the weight of expectations I understand too well. And because, he paused, because something in me doesn't want to see your fire extinguished. The words landed between them like a confession. Aria knew she should be suspicious. Her mother's warnings echoed in her head. He's dangerous, he's manipulative. He sees weaknesses and exploits them. But sitting here, slightly drunk and completely honest, she couldn't find the threat everyone kept warning her about. She only saw a man who'd shown her more understanding in 2 conversations than her entire family had in weeks. If I agree to this, Aria said slowly, what do you get out of it? The satisfaction of irritating your mother. Victor's mouth curved slightly. And perhaps the knowledge that I help someone maintain their autonomy in a world designed to strip it away. You're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to accept help from someone who has no interest in changing who you are. The rest is up to you. Aria stared into his dark eyes, weighing the offer against every warning she'd received. This was dangerous, possibly stupid, definitely against every rule her mother had laid down, which was exactly why some reckless part of her wanted to say yes. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Victor nodded once, pulling out his phone. He typed something quickly, then set it aside. It's done. Tomorrow morning, a man named Marcus will arrive at your home. He's ex-military, completely competent, and utterly loyal. He'll introduce himself as your security detail. Your mother will run his background, find impeccable credentials, and accept him. What she won't find is that he reports to me. Marcus? Aria couldn't help but smile slightly. Same name as my father. A coincidence, though perhaps a fortuitous one. The weight that had been pressing on Aria's chest since her mother's ultimatum loosened slightly. She took a shaky breath. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're still going to have to navigate your mother's expectations. Still going to fight for every inch of freedom. All I've given you is someone who won't betray you while you do it. It's more than anyone else has offered. They sat in silence for a while, the club's atmosphere washing over them. Aria felt the alcohol slowly wearing off, leaving behind a strange clarity. She'd just made a deal with a man her mother had explicitly forbidden her from speaking to, had accepted help from someone the entire city feared, and somehow she didn't regret it. I should get you home, Victor said eventually, before your family sends a search party. Probably too late for that. But Aria slid off the bar stool, grateful when Victor's hand steadied her elbow. The world tilted only slightly this time. Victor guided her toward a private elevator, his hand remaining at the small of her back, protective, not possessive. The gesture felt natural, and Aria didn't pull away. The car waiting outside was understated but expensive, with a driver who didn't react at all to his employer appearing with a slightly disheveled woman. Victor held the door open, and Aria slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly rent in London. Victor settled beside her, maintaining a careful distance. "Can I ask you something?" Aria said as the car pulled into late-night traffic. "You can ask. I may not answer." "Well, why did you really come to the memorial tonight?" "The truth." Victor was quiet for so long that Aria thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because your grandmother asked me to." Aria turned to stare at him. "What?" "About a month before she died, she called me, said she needed a favor." Victor's voice was soft, almost gentle. "She knew she was dying, knew her time was short, and she was worried about you, about what would happen when you came home without her protection." Aria's throat tightened painfully. "She asked you to—" "What?" "To watch over you, to make sure that in her absence someone would see you as she did, as a person, not a pawn, as someone worth protecting for their own sake, not for strategic advantage." Tears burned behind Aria's eyes. It was so perfectly her grandmother, still orchestrating, still protecting, even from beyond the grave. "And you agreed? Just like that?" "I owed her several favors. She never collected on any of them, despite numerous opportunities where my particular skills could have been useful." Victor's jaw tightened slightly. "So when she finally asked for something, I couldn't refuse, even knowing it would complicate my life considerably. Is that what I am to you? A complication?" Victor turned to look at her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made Aria's breath catch. "You're something. I haven't quite figured out what yet." The car pulled up to the DeLuca estate, its windows dark except for a few lights on the upper floors. Aria's mother was probably waiting, ready to interrogate her about where she'd been. "Thank you," Aria said again. "For tonight. For everything. Remember what I told you on the terrace?" Victor's voice was low, serious. "Don't give them an inch. The moment you start compromising yourself for their comfort, you've already lost." Aria nodded, then, impulsively, recklessly, leaned over and kissed his cheek. It was brief, innocent, just a brush of lips against skin roughened with late-night stubble, but the contact sent electricity through her entire body. Victor went very still, his eyes darkening. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Aria pulled back, her heart racing. "Good night, Victor." She was out of the car before he could respond, walking toward her family's estate with her head high despite her shaking hands. She didn't look back, but she felt his gaze follow her all the way to the door. Inside, her mother was indeed waiting, perched in the sitting room like a queen on a throne. But Aria met her fury with calm defiance, answering questions with minimal detail and refusing to apologize. Tomorrow, Marcus would arrive. Tomorrow, the cage would feel a little less suffocating. And somehow, because of a dangerous man who'd made a promise to a dying woman, Aria felt like she could breathe again. Morning came too early, announced by pale sunlight filtering through curtains Aria had forgotten to close. Her head throbbed with the promise of a hangover she absolutely deserved, and her mouth tasted like regret and expensive whiskey. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling of her childhood bedroom, trying to piece together whether last night had actually happened or if her grief-addled brain had conjured the entire encounter. The phantom sensation of Victor's stubble against her lips suggested otherwise. "Idiot," she muttered to herself, pressing the heels of her palms against her eyes. What had she been thinking, kissing him like that? Even if it was just his cheek, even if it meant nothing, it was reckless and stupid and exactly the kind of impulsive behavior her mother had been warning against. Except it hadn't felt stupid in the moment. It had felt like the first honest thing she'd done in weeks. A sharp knock on her door scattered her thoughts. "Aria." Her mother's voice carried through the wood, crisp and commanding even at 7 in the morning. "You have a visitor downstairs. Your new security detail has arrived." So that part was real too. Aria forced herself upright, ignoring the way the room tilted slightly. She grabbed clothes without thinking, jeans, a sweater, nothing that would please her mother's sense of propriety. Good. Let Catherine see exactly how little she cared about keeping up appearances today. 20 minutes later, showered and marginally more human, Aria descended the grand staircase to find her mother in the foyer speaking with a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite. He stood with military precision, dark suit impeccable, expression professionally neutral. Early 40s, she guessed, with close-cropped hair showing threads of silver and eyes that tracked her approach with the kind of awareness that came from years of watching for threats. Dr. DeLuca. He extended his hand as she reached the bottom step. Marcus Donovan. I'll be handling your security moving forward. His handshake was firm, but not crushing, his voice carrying a faint accent she couldn't quite place. Aria searched his face for any sign that he was Victor's man, but found nothing. No knowing look, no subtle acknowledgement, just professional competence wrapped in an expensive suit. Either he was incredibly good at his job, or last night really had been a whiskey-fueled hallucination. I've reviewed Mr. Donovan's credentials, Catherine said, her tone suggesting she'd done far more than a simple review. Former Special Forces, private security for several high-profile families, impeccable references. He comes highly recommended. By whom? Aria asked, unable to help herself. Multiple sources. Catherine's smile was sharp. All of whom assured me that Mr. Donovan is extremely capable and, more importantly, discreet. Marcus's expression didn't flicker. I'm here to ensure your safety, Dr. DeLuca. Nothing more, nothing less. What my mother means, Aria said, meeting his eyes directly, is that you're here to make sure I don't embarrass the family or make any decisions she doesn't approve of. Isn't that right, Mother? Catherine's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'm ensuring you're protected during a difficult time. There's a difference. Is there? The tension stretched between them until Marcus cleared his throat softly. Perhaps we should discuss the parameters of the arrangement. Doctor. DeLuca, is there somewhere we could talk privately? Aria gestured toward her father's study. This way. She felt her mother's gaze burning into her back as they walked away, but Catherine didn't follow. Small mercies. The study was exactly as her father had left it that morning. Papers scattered across the desk, coffee cup still half full, the lingering scent of his cologne. Marcus closed the door and waited until Aria settled into one of the leather chairs before speaking. Your mother believes I work for her, he said quietly. She's wrong. Relief flooded through Aria so suddenly she almost laughed. So last night actually happened. I was starting to think I'd imagined the whole thing. Victor Romano doesn't do imaginary favors. Marcus's mouth quirked slightly. He does, however, take promises to dying women very seriously. He told you about my grandmother? He told me enough. That you needed protection from people who claim to have your best interests at heart, but are really interested in control. That you deserve someone in your corner who won't betray you to your mother the moment things get uncomfortable. Marcus leaned against the desk, arms crossed. For what it's worth, I agree. Aria studied him carefully. Why would you agree? You don't know me. I know enough. I know you're a trauma surgeon who spent the last 5 years working in one of London's busiest hospitals. I know you've built a career on your own merit despite having a family name that could have opened any door. And I know you came home because someone you loved died, not because you wanted to return to this. He gestured vaguely at the opulent study. That tells me you're someone worth protecting for the right reasons. The right reasons being? Because everyone deserves at least one person in their life who isn't playing an angle. The simple honesty of it hit Aria harder than expected. She blinked against sudden moisture in her eyes, looking away. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do with you here. My mother expects you to follow me everywhere, report back, keep me on some invisible leash. What am I supposed to tell her when you don't? Tell her nothing. Let me handle your mother. Marcus's voice was calm, certain. As far as Catherine DeLuca knows, I'm exactly what she hired, a highly trained professional keeping her daughter safe. She doesn't need to know that my definition of safe includes protecting you from her manipulation. She'll figure it out eventually. Maybe. But by then, you'll have had time to breathe, to figure out what you actually want instead of constantly reacting to what everyone else demands. He paused. Victor said to tell you something. He said, don't give them an inch. You know what that means? Aria nodded, her throat tight. Good. Then let's establish some ground rules. I'll accompany you when you leave the estate. Your mother will expect that. And honestly, it's not a bad idea given your family's profile. But I won't restrict where you go or who you see. I won't report your movements back to Catherine unless there's an actual security concern. And I sure as hell won't try to control your choices. What if I want to go somewhere dangerous? What if I want to do something reckless? Marcus actually smiled then, a quick flash that transformed his stern features. Then I'll make sure you survive it. That's what I'm good at. Despite everything, the headache, the emotional exhaustion, the tangled mess her life had become, Aria felt herself smile back. I think my grandmother would have liked you. Victor said the same thing, said she had a gift for seeing through bullshit and appreciating people who didn't waste her time with it. They talked for another 20 minutes, establishing what Marcus called operational parameters and what Aria thought of as the rules of their strange alliance. He would live in the guest house on the estate grounds, be visible enough to satisfy her mother's need for security theater, but ghost-like enough to give Aria space. He'd drive her where she needed to go, but wouldn't question the destinations. And most importantly, he'd serve as a buffer between Aria and the various ways her family would try to manipulate her. One more thing, Marcus said as they prepared to leave the study. Victor wants to see you. Aria's pulse jumped. When? Tonight, if you're willing. He has some information about your grandmother he thinks you should know. Information she apparently left with him before she died. What kind of information? The kind he won't trust to phone calls or messengers. Marcus's expression was unreadable. He's asking, not demanding. If you'd rather not, I'll go, Aria said, perhaps too quickly. Where? He'll send a car at 8. Dress nice, but not too nice, somewhere between family dinner and first date. The phrasing made Aria's cheeks heat slightly. It's not a date. Didn't say it was, but the place he's taking you has standards. Marcus opened the study door, his professional mask sliding back into place as they stepped into the hallway. Now, let's go reassure your mother that I'm taking my job very seriously. Catherine was waiting in the sitting room, pretending to read a magazine, but obviously listening for their return. She looked up as they entered, her gaze sharp and assessing. Well? Everything is arranged, Mrs. DeLuca, Marcus said smoothly. I'll be staying in the guest house and accompanying Dr. DeLuca whenever she leaves the property. I've outlined the security protocols, and she's agreed to cooperate fully. The lie rolled off his tongue so easily that Aria almost believed it herself. Catherine's eyes narrowed slightly, searching for cracks in the story. And you understand that I expect regular updates on my daughter's activities? You'll receive daily reports on any security concerns, Marcus replied, which wasn't exactly what Catherine had asked, but sounded close enough to be acceptable. Dr. DeLuca's safety is my top priority. See that it remains so? Catherine turned to Aria. I've made an appointment for you this afternoon at Memorial Hospital. Dr. Patterson wants to discuss your potential position in their trauma department. Marcus will drive you. It wasn't a request. Aria bit back her first response, remembering her father's words about choosing her battles. What time? 2:00. Don't be late. Catherine's attention shifted back to her magazine, a clear dismissal. And Aria? Wear something appropriate. First impressions matter. Aria left the room before she said something she'd regret, Marcus following at a respectful distance. Once they were safely upstairs and out of earshot, she let out a long breath. She's already trying to arrange my entire life. I've been home less than a month, and she's got interviews scheduled, social obligations planned, my whole future mapped out like a military campaign. Sounds about right for Catherine DeLuca, Marcus said mildly. The woman doesn't do anything by half measures. How do you know so much about my family? Part of my job is knowing who I'm protecting and what threats they face. Your mother is intense. Your father is conflict averse. And you're the wild card they don't know how to control. He paused. Which is why they're trying so hard. I'm not a wild card. I'm just a person who wants to make her own choices. In a family like yours, that amounts to the same thing. The hours until evening crawled by with agonizing slowness. The hospital interview was exactly as soul-crushing as Aria had expected. Dr. Patterson spent 45 minutes explaining how fortunate she was to be considered for a position at such a prestigious institution, how her family's generous donations had certainly helped expedite the process, and how he hoped she understood the importance of maintaining the hospital's reputation through appropriate behavior both in and out of the workplace. Aria smiled and nodded and hated every second of it. You did well, Marcus commented on the drive home. Didn't tell him to go to hell even once. I was tempted, about 17 times by my count. I noticed the vein in your temple was very expressive. Despite herself, Aria laughed. Is that your professional security assessment? That's my assessment as someone who spent the day watching you bite your tongue so hard I'm surprised you're not bleeding. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. For what it's worth, the job sounds terrible. You'd be miserable there. My mother thinks it's perfect. Prestigious, well-paid, excellent networking opportunities. Your mother isn't the one who'd have to spend 60 hours a week working for a condescending ass who sees you as a trophy hire rather than a qualified surgeon. The validation felt like water in a desert. Thank you for saying that. Just calling it like I see it. Marcus pulled through the estate gates. You've got about 3 hours before Victor's car arrives. Might want to rest. You look exhausted. Aria did rest, or tried to, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, she lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to untangle the complicated knot of emotions in her chest. Grief for her grandmother, resentment toward her mother, gratitude for her father's unexpected honesty, confusion about Victor and whatever strange connection was forming between them. And underneath it all, a growing sense of urgency. The feeling that if she didn't make a stand soon, if she didn't fight for her autonomy now, she'd wake up 5 years from now living her mother's version of her life instead of her own. At 7:30, she showered and stood in front of her closet, contemplating Marcus's instruction to dress nice, but not too nice. She finally settled on a deep green dress that hit just above the knee, elegant without being formal, sophisticated without trying too hard. She left her hair down, added minimal makeup, and decided that if this was too much or too little, Victor would just have to deal with it. The car arrived precisely at 8. Not Victor's driver from last night, but a different one. Older, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He opened the door for her without comment, and Aria slid into the back seat, her heart beating faster than the situation warranted. They drove through the city as twilight faded into night, the streetlights casting golden pools on wet pavement. Aria watched the familiar landscape slide past, her city, the place she'd grown up, now feeling foreign after 5 years away. Or maybe she was the foreign thing, no longer quite fitting into the shape she'd left behind. The car pulled up to a building Aria recognized immediately. Luciano's, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. The kind of place where reservations were made months in advance and the waitstaff could spot fake designer from across the room. Of course, Victor would choose here. He was waiting near the entrance, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His eyes tracked her as she approached, and Aria felt heat rise in her cheeks under his scrutiny. Dr. DeLuca. He offered his arm and she took it, acutely aware of the strength beneath the expensive fabric. You look beautiful. You said to dress nice. I said Marcus said to dress nice, but the assessment stands. Victor guided her inside where the maitre d' greeted him by name and led them to a private room overlooking the city. The space was intimate without being claustrophobic. Soft lighting, a single table set for two, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering skyline. A waiter appeared long enough to pour wine and disappear again, leaving them alone. This is a lot for a conversation about my grandmother, Aria said, settling into her chair. Your grandmother deserved grand gestures. I thought you might too. Victor sat across from her, and in the candlelight, he looked somehow younger and older at the same time, the harsh lines of his face softened by shadow, but his eyes holding centuries of experience. How was your first day with Marcus? Surprisingly good. He's competent, professional, and apparently willing to lie to my mother on my behalf. I'm not sure whether to be grateful or concerned. Be grateful. Lying to Catherine DeLuca is a skill that requires significant practice and nerves of steel. Marcus has both. Victor's mouth curved slightly. And he likes you, which helps. He's not particularly inclined to protect people he doesn't respect. What did you tell him about me? Very little. Marcus forms his own opinions. Victor paused as their first course arrived, something artfully arranged that Aria was too nervous to properly appreciate. I told him your grandmother asked me to watch over you, that you were grieving and trapped and deserving of support from someone without ulterior motives. The rest, he figured out himself. They ate in companionable silence for a moment before Aria's curiosity won out. You said you had information about my grandmother, something she left with you. Victor set down his fork carefully. She left me several things, actually. Letters, mostly. Instructions for how to handle certain matters after her death. And one item she specifically wanted you to have, but not immediately. She asked me to wait until you seemed ready. Ready for what? To hear the truth about your family. Victor's eyes held hers steadily. Your grandmother loved you, Aria, more than anything. But she was also pragmatic enough to know that love sometimes requires difficult honesty. Aria's stomach tightened. What kind of truth? Victor reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope. Thick, cream-colored, sealed with wax that bore her grandmother's distinctive seal. Aria's hands trembled slightly as she took it. She wrote this 2 weeks before she died, Victor said quietly. Made me promise not to give it to you until after the memorial, after you'd had time to settle back in and see the situation clearly. She said you'd need to understand what you were really fighting against before you could make informed choices about your future. Aria turned the envelope over, seeing her name written in her grandmother's elegant script. The sight of that familiar handwriting made her throat close up. Should I read it now? That's your choice. But be prepared. Your grandmother didn't believe in comfortable lies. Whatever's in there, it's the truth as she saw it. And from what she told me, it's not particularly flattering to certain members of your family. Aria broke the seal with shaking fingers and unfolded several pages of heavy paper. Her grandmother's voice came through immediately in the precise, flowing words. My dearest Aria, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're back in the cage I spent years helping you escape. I'm sorry for that. Sorry I couldn't live long enough to keep running interference, to keep being the shield between you and your mother's ambitions. But I'm not sorry for the choices I made, and I hope by the time you finish this letter, you won't be either. There are things you need to know about our family, about the DeLuca legacy that Catherine guards so fiercely and your father endures so miserably. Things I should have told you years ago, but kept hoping you'd never need to know. The DeLuca fortune wasn't built on real estate and smart investments, darling. Not originally. Your great-grandfather made his money running liquor during Prohibition, then laundered it through legitimate businesses over the following decades. By the time your father inherited, the empire was mostly clean, but the connections remained. The debts, the favors, the complicated web of alliances with people who operate outside the law. Your mother knows this. She's always known. And rather than distance the family from those roots, she's cultivated them, used them. The hospital donations, the charity galas, the carefully curated social connections. They're not just about prestige. They're about maintaining relationships with people who can make problems disappear, who can influence outcomes, who can protect the DeLuca interests through means your father is too weak to acknowledge and too complicit to stop. Aria looked up from the letter, her hands shaking. This can't be true. Keep reading, Victor said gently. I know this is difficult to accept. You want to believe your family is better than this. I wanted to believe it too, for a long time. But I learned the truth the hard way, and I've spent the last 20 years trying to protect you from being pulled into it. That's why I supported your decision to study abroad. Why I encouraged you to build a life away from here. Why I fought your mother every time she tried to reel you back in. Because I knew that once you returned permanently, once you were reintegrated into the family machine, you'd become another cog in their system, another asset to be deployed for the DeLuca interests. Your mother sees you as a strategic resource, Aria. Your medical degree, your intelligence, your compassion, she wants to leverage all of it. The hospital position she's arranging isn't about your career. It's about placing you where you can be useful to her network, where you can provide favors and access and cover for activities you'll never fully understand until you're too implicated to walk away. I wish I could tell you I'm wrong, that I'm a paranoid old woman seeing conspiracies where none exist. But I've spent decades watching Catherine operate, and I know exactly what she's capable of. She's not evil, understand. She's pragmatic. She does what she believes necessary to protect the family. But her definition of protection has always involved control, manipulation, and the strategic sacrifice of individual happiness for collective power. So I'm giving you 2 gifts, my darling girl. First, this truth, uncomfortable as it is. And second, an ally who can help you navigate the dangerous waters you're about to enter. Victor Romano owes me several considerable favors. I've asked him to watch over you, to provide protection from threats both outside and within your family. You may find this choice shocking. He has a fearsome reputation, and not without cause. But I've known Victor for nearly 20 years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, he's one of the few truly honest men I've ever met. He doesn't pretend to be something he's not. He doesn't hide his nature behind polite fiction. And most importantly, when he gives his word, he keeps it. I've asked him to help you maintain your autonomy, to ensure that your security detail actually protects you rather than serving as your mother's spy, to provide resources and support for whatever choices you make, even if those choices horrify your family. Trust him, Aria. I know that's asking a lot. Trust doesn't come easily in our world. But Victor is perhaps the only person in this city with the power to stand against your mother and the integrity to use that power in your interest rather than his own. You have choices, my darling. You can return to London, resume your life there, and let the DeLucas fade into the background of your existence. You can stay here and fight for the right to live authentically despite your family's expectations. Or you can do what your father did, submit to the pressure, accept the golden cage, and spend the rest of your life wondering what you might have been if you'd been brave enough to try. Whatever you choose, know that I love you, that I'm proud of you, that watching you grow into the brilliant, compassionate woman you've become has been the greatest joy of my life. Don't let them extinguish your fire, Aria. The world has enough obedient children. It needs more warriors willing to fight for their own souls. With all my love, Grandmother Aria set the letter down with shaking hands, her vision blurring with tears. Around them, the restaurant continued its elegant dance, waiters moving silently, other diners laughing softly in their private rooms, but she felt entirely disconnected from it all. "Is it true?" she whispered. "What she said about my family?" Victor's expression was carefully neutral. "Your grandmother didn't lie about anything. But my father, he couldn't know about this. He's a good man. He wouldn't—" "Your father knows exactly what he is," Victor interrupted quietly. "He's a man who chose comfort over conscience, who looked the other way while your mother built an empire on the foundation his family provided. He's not evil, Aria. He's just weak. And in some ways, that's worse." The words hit like a physical blow because they rang true. Her father's confession from the memorial, his talk of regrets and lost dreams, it all made terrible sense now. "Why didn't she tell me before?" Aria's voice broke. "Why wait until she was dead to drop this bomb?" "Because while she was alive, she could protect you from the consequences of knowing, could run interference, deflect your mother's attention, give you plausible deniability." Victor reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "But she knew that once she was gone, you'd need more than ignorance to survive. You'd need the truth and the tools to fight back. And you're one of those tools. If you'll have me." His thumb traced small circles on her wrist, the gesture both comforting and charged with something else. "I made your grandmother a promise, but more than that, I find myself genuinely invested in your freedom, which is—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Unusual for me." Aria looked at their joined hands, her heart racing. "My mother told me you're dangerous, that you collect information, identify weaknesses, manipulate people for your own gain. Your mother is right. I am all those things." Victor's honesty was brutal, unflinching. "I've built an empire on fear and violence and strategic manipulation. I'm not a good man by any conventional measure. But I keep my promises, Aria, and I promised your grandmother I would protect you, not use you, not manipulate you, protect you. Why should I believe you? Because I have nothing to gain from lying. You have no resources I need, no connections I can't access elsewhere, no strategic value to my empire. The only reason I'm sitting here, the only reason I've involved myself in your situation is because a woman I respected asked me to, and because something about you makes me want to be the man she believed I could be." The raw vulnerability in his admission made Aria's chest ache. She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all this. The truth about my family, this weird alliance with you, Marcus lying to my mother on my behalf. It's too much." "Then don't decide everything tonight. Just decide the next step." "What's the next step?" Victor's eyes held hers intently. "Finish dinner with me. Let me drive you home. Tomorrow, make whatever choice feels right about the hospital position, your mother's expectations, your future. But tonight, just be Aria. Not Dr. DeLuca, not Catherine's daughter, not anyone's pawn, just yourself. The offer was simultaneously simple and profound. Aria realized she couldn't remember the last time someone had given her permission to just exist without ulterior motive. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They finished dinner talking about everything except families and obligations and dangerous truths. Victor asked about her work in London, and Aria found herself describing complicated surgeries and difficult cases with genuine enthusiasm. He told her about a restoration project he was funding, an old theater that had fallen into disrepair. And she heard authentic passion beneath his measured words. It was strange, surreal even, to be sitting across from a man whose reputation should have terrified her, feeling more comfortable than she had in weeks. Victor didn't try to fix her problems or offer unsolicited advice. He just listened, engaged, made her laugh with dry observations about the absurdity of high society. By the time dessert arrived, Aria had almost forgotten the weight of her grandmother's letter. Almost. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said, as they shared some elaborate chocolate creation. "You can ask." "Why did you agree to help my grandmother? You said you owed her favors, but you strike me as someone who could have found a way out if you'd wanted to." Victor set down his fork, considering. "Your grandmother once saved my life. Not dramatically, no bullets or poison, nothing cinematic. But she saw me at my lowest point and chose compassion over judgment. Gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever." "What?" "The belief that I could be more than what I'd become." His voice was barely audible. "I was at a charity function years ago. Someone made a comment, called me a monster in a suit, said I didn't belong among decent people. Your grandmother overheard and tore into them so viciously that they left in tears. Then she sat down next to me and said, 'Anyone who judges a man solely by his past has no imagination for his future.'" Aria's eyes stung. That sounded exactly like something her grandmother would say. After that, she treated me like a human being, asked my opinion on foundation matters, included me in conversations, defended my presence when others questioned it. She never pretended I wasn't what I was. She just refused to let that be the only thing I was. Victor's jaw tightened. When she called asking for this favor, I didn't hesitate. She'd given me dignity when I least deserved it. The least I could do was help protect the person she loved most. "She had good taste in people," Aria said softly. "She did. Which is why I'm trusting her judgment about you." The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them named but both clearly felt. Aria was intensely aware of how close they were sitting, how Victor's eyes seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed defenses. "I should get you home," Victor said finally, though he didn't move. "Before your mother sends a search party. Probably too late for that." But Aria stood, accepting her coat from the waiter who materialized at exactly the right moment. The drive back to the estate was quiet, contemplative. Aria watched the city lights streak past, her mind churning through everything she'd learned, her family's criminal roots, her mother's manipulation, her grandmother's faith in Victor, the impossible choice stretching before her. The car pulled through the estate gates and Aria felt the cage closing in again. "Thank you," she said as they stopped near the entrance. "For dinner, for the letter, for being honest about everything." "It's not kindness, Aria. It's strategy. Just pointed in your favor instead of against you." "I don't believe that." She met his eyes. "I think my grandmother saw something in you that you don't want to acknowledge. Something good underneath all the power and violence." "Then your grandmother and you are both naive." "Maybe. Or maybe you're more afraid of that possibility than you want to admit." Victor's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise or might have been longing. For a moment, Aria thought he might argue. Instead, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Be careful, Dr. DeLuca. Seeing the best in dangerous men rarely ends well. I'm a trauma surgeon. I'm used to navigating dangerous situations. Not like this." His hand dropped away. "Tomorrow, you'll wake up and have to make decisions. Hard ones. About whether to trust me, whether to fight your mother, whether to stay or run. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But tonight, I need you to understand something." "What?" "This," he gestured between them. "Whatever this is becoming, it complicates everything, for both of us. Your family will see it as betrayal. My associates will see it as weakness. And we've only just begun to navigate the danger your grandmother's letter revealed. Aria's heart hammered against her ribs. Are you telling me to stay away from you? I'm telling you to be sure. Because once we cross certain lines, there's no going back to safe, comfortable distance. And I refuse to be responsible for destroying whatever peace you might still salvage from this situation. What if I don't want peace? The words escaped before Aria could stop them. What if I'm tired of safe and comfortable and playing by everyone else's rules? Victor's eyes darkened dangerously. Then you're even more like your grandmother than I realized, which is either the best or worst thing I've heard all night. They stared at each other, the space between them electric with possibility and restraint. Aria knew she should leave, should walk away before this became something neither of them could control. Instead, she leaned in and kissed him. Not on the cheek this time. Full on the mouth, pressing herself against him with 5 years of pent-up rebellion and grief and desperate need to feel something real. For one shocked second, Victor went rigid. Then his hands came up to cradle her face, and he kissed her back with an intensity that stole her breath. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was consuming, fierce, laced with the kind of hunger that comes from years of denying yourself what you want. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. That, he said roughly, was a terrible decision. I know. Your mother will lose her mind. Your family will see it as the ultimate betrayal. My world will eat you alive. I know that too. And you're still here. I'm still here. Aria pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I'm tired of living my life according to other people's fears, Victor. My mother's, my family's, maybe even yours. Something in his expression cracked open, revealing the want beneath his careful control. You have no idea what you're starting. Then show me. Victor kissed her again, slower this time, but no less devastating. His hands tangled in her hair, and Aria felt herself falling into something reckless and inevitable and absolutely terrifying. When he finally released her, they were both shaking. Go inside, Victor said, his voice raw. Before I forget every reason this is a terrible idea. Aria nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She gathered her coat and purse, her lips still burning from his kiss, and forced herself to open the car door. Aria, Victor's voice stopped her. Tomorrow, when reality hits and you regret this, I won't. You might. But if you do, I'll understand. No judgment, no pressure. You can walk away, and I'll still keep my promise to your grandmother. And if I don't want to walk away? His smile was sharp and dangerous and utterly captivating. Then we'll burn down the world together. But at least we'll do it honestly. Aria walked into the house on trembling legs, her mind spinning and her heart racing, and every carefully constructed plan for her future dissolving into beautiful chaos. Her mother was waiting in the sitting room as always. But this time, when Catherine opened her mouth to interrogate her about where she'd been and who she'd seen, Aria held up a hand. Not tonight, Mother. Whatever you want to say, whatever lecture you've prepared, it can wait until morning. Catherine's eyes widened in shock. Excuse me? I'm exhausted. I'm grieving. And I'm done answering to you like a teenager with a curfew. Aria kept her voice steady, channeling every ounce of her grandmother's steel. I'm 28 years old, I've been living independently for 5 years, and I won't be treated like a child just because I'm back under your roof. Aria DeLuca, you will not speak to me that— Good night, Mother. Aria walked past her and up the stairs without looking back, her heart pounding, but her head high. Behind her, she heard her mother's shocked silence, felt the shift in power that came from finally saying no. In her room, she caught sight of herself in the mirror, hair slightly mussed from Victor's fingers, lips swollen from his kiss, eyes bright with defiance and possibility. She looked like her grandmother, wild, fierce, unbreakable. And for the first time since coming home, Aria recognized the woman staring back at her. The war began at breakfast. Aria descended the stairs the next morning to find her mother already positioned in the dining room like a general preparing for battle. Catherine sat ramrod straight at the head of the table, coffee untouched, her expression carved from ice. The morning light streaming through the windows made her look severe, unyielding. Sit down, Catherine said without preamble. We need to talk. Aria poured herself coffee with deliberately steady hands, Remembering the feel of Victor's lips on hers, the way his fingers had tangled in her hair, the memory gave her strength. "Good morning to you too, Mother." "Don't!" Catherine's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't pretend last night didn't happen. Don't act like you didn't just cross a line we can never uncross." So she knew. Of course she knew. Catherine DeLuca didn't miss anything that happened in her domain. "I had dinner with a family friend," Aria said calmly, taking a seat. Hardly scandalous. "Victor Romano is not a family friend. He's a dangerous criminal who has somehow convinced you that he has your best interests at heart." Catherine's hands were white-knuckled around her coffee cup. "How long has this been going on?" "There's nothing going on." "Liar." The word was sharp, precise. "I saw you, Aria, getting out of his car at nearly midnight, your hair mussed, your lips swollen. Do you think I'm blind? Do you think I don't recognize the look of a woman who's been thoroughly kissed?" Heat flooded Aria's cheeks, but she held her ground. "My personal life is none of your business." "Your personal life became my business the moment you started sleeping with the most dangerous man in this city." "I'm not sleeping with him." "Not yet." Catherine leaned forward. "But you will. I can see it written all over your face, that reckless, stupid defiance that makes you think you're being brave when you're really just being played." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Catherine's laugh was bitter. "I was 26 when I met your father. Young, idealistic, convinced I could navigate this world on my own terms. Do you know what I learned? That men like Victor Romano don't do anything without calculating the cost and benefit. He sees something in you, some advantage, some leverage, and he's using your grief and rebellion to manipulate you into giving it to him. He's not manipulating me. He's helping me." "Helping you?" Catherine's voice rose. "He's isolating you from your family, feeding you lies about our business, convincing you that everyone who actually cares about you is the enemy. That's not help, Aria. That's a classic manipulation tactic." Aria set down her coffee cup with a sharp click. "Grandmother trusted him. She asked him to watch over me." The mention of her grandmother made Catherine's expression flicker, just for a second, with something that might have been pain. "Your grandmother was a brilliant woman, but she had blind spots. Victor Romano was one of them. Or maybe you're the one with blind spots. Maybe you're so invested in controlling every aspect of this family that you can't recognize genuine help when you see it." "Genuine help?" Catherine's voice dripped with contempt. "Is that what you call it? When a crime boss wines and dines a vulnerable young woman and then kisses her in the back of his car? When he plants a security guard in our home who reports back to him instead of us?" Aria's stomach dropped. "You know about Marcus." "I've known about Marcus since the moment he walked through our door. Did you really think I wouldn't thoroughly vet anyone I hired to protect my daughter? I found the connection to Victor within hours. What I didn't know was why." Catherine stood, moving to the window with predatory grace. "Now I understand. Victor wanted eyes inside our home, someone to monitor you, feed you his version of events, drive a wedge between you and your family." "That's not what's happening." "Then what is happening, Aria? Explain it to me." "Because from where I'm standing, you've been home less than a month and you're already in bed. Metaphorically or literally, I'm not sure which. With a man who has built an empire on violence and corruption. A man who sees you as what? A trophy? A way to legitimize himself in polite society? A strategic connection to the DeLuca name?" Each question landed like a blow, and Aria felt her certainty wavering. Because wasn't that exactly what she'd wondered herself? Hadn't she asked Victor directly what he got out of helping her? But then she remembered his answer, remembered the raw vulnerability in his voice when he told her about her grandmother's kindness, the way he'd warned her away even as he kissed her. "He gets nothing from me," Aria said quietly. "Except maybe the satisfaction of keeping a promise to a woman he respected." "You're so naive it breaks my heart." Catherine turned from the window, and for just a moment Aria saw genuine fear in her mother's eyes. "Do you know what happens to women who get involved with men like Victor Romano? They disappear into his world. They become extensions of his power, complicit in his crimes whether they want to be or not. They lose themselves piece by piece until they wake up one day and don't recognize the person they've become." "Like you lost yourself to this family?" The words escaped before Aria could stop them, and they hung in the air like poison. Catherine went very still. What did you say? I read grandmother's letter. I know about the family business, about the criminal connections you've cultivated instead of severing, about how you use every relationship, every connection as a strategic asset. Aria stood to face her mother directly. You're not afraid Victor will corrupt me, Mother. You're afraid he'll help me escape your corruption. Catherine's face went white, then red. Your grandmother had no right to tell you those things. She had no understanding of what it takes to protect this family, to maintain our position in a world that would destroy us if we showed any weakness. She understood perfectly. She just chose not to participate in it. And look where that got her. Dead and gone, while the rest of us are left to deal with the consequences of her moral superiority. Catherine's voice cracked slightly. I do what I do to protect you, Aria. You and your father and everything we've built. If that requires occasionally making deals with people your grandmother disapproved of, so be it. I won't apologize for keeping this family safe. Safe? Aria laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it? Because it feels a lot more like control. Control is safety. The moment you lose control in this world, you lose everything. Catherine moved closer, her voice dropping to something almost pleading. I'm trying to protect you from making a catastrophic mistake. Victor Romano may seem charming, may even seem sincere, but he's a predator. And the moment you're no longer useful to him, he'll discard you without a second thought. You're wrong about him. Am I? Then answer me this. What happens when being involved with you becomes a liability? When your relationship draws unwanted attention from his enemies or law enforcement? When protecting you costs him more than it benefits him? Catherine's eyes bored into hers. Do you really think he'll choose you over his empire? The question wormed its way into Aria's chest, finding the doubt she'd been trying to ignore. She thought about Victor's world, the violence, the danger, the ruthless calculations. Could he really care about her when his entire existence was built on strategic self-interest? But then she remembered his hands cradling her face, the way he'd kissed her like she was something precious and terrifying. The vulnerability in his voice when he'd warned her away even as he pulled her closer. I don't know, Aria admitted, but I know you won't choose me over your control. At least with Victor, I have a choice. You just want me to submit. Catherine's expression hardened. If you continue this relationship, there will be consequences. Is that a threat? It's a fact. I've worked too hard to build this family's reputation to let you destroy it by becoming Victor Romano's latest acquisition. So here's what's going to happen. Catherine's voice turned cold, final. You will end this relationship immediately. You will apologize to Dr. Patterson and accept the position at Memorial Hospital. You will start attending the social functions I've arranged and behave like the DeLuca heir you're supposed to be. And most importantly, you will never speak to Victor Romano again. And if I refuse, then I'll cut you off. Every penny of your trust fund, every family connection, every resource you've ever relied on. You'll be on your own, Aria, completely and utterly alone. Let's see how long Victor's interest lasts when you bring nothing to the table but debt and scandal. The ultimatum hung between them like a guillotine blade. Aria felt something inside her crystallize into diamond-hard resolve. Do it. Catherine blinked. What? Cut me off. Take the money, the connections, all of it. I'll survive. I'm a surgeon, Mother. I have actual skills that don't depend on the DeLuca name. Can you say the same? The shot hit its mark. Catherine's face went rigid with fury. You ungrateful, foolish child. After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed, everything you've done to control me, Aria interrupted. There's a difference, and I'm done pretending there isn't. She walked out before her mother could respond, her heart hammering but her steps steady. Behind her, she heard the sharp crack of Catherine's coffee cup hitting the wall, shattering into 1,000 pieces. The sound felt like freedom. Marcus was waiting in the hallway, his expression carefully neutral. That went well? You heard? The entire staff heard. Your mother's not exactly quiet when she's angry. He fell into step beside her as Aria headed for the stairs. For what it's worth, I think you just declared war. Good. I'm tired of peacetime negotiations that are really just slow surrenders. Marcus's mouth quirked. Victor's gonna love this. Or possibly have a heart attack. Hard to say which. Aria paused mid-step. Does he know about what happened last night? I mean, about... She gestured vaguely, her cheeks heating. About you two playing tonsil hockey in the back of his car? Yeah, he knows. He called me at midnight sounding approximately 30% thrilled and 70% terrified. It was actually kind of entertaining. Despite everything, Aria felt herself smile. Terrified? Victor Romano doesn't scare easily. But apparently the idea of caring about someone who could actually get hurt in his world is enough to send him into strategic panic mode. Marcus's expression grew serious. He's trying to figure out how to protect you from the consequences of this relationship, which is complicated since the consequences include him. I can protect myself. Against your mother, maybe. Against the people who'll see you as leverage against Victor? Marcus shook his head. That's a different ballgame, Doc. One you're not equipped for yet. The yet suggested he planned to change that, which was both comforting and concerning. Aria's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk, not about last night, about what comes next. Can you get away? She knew immediately who it was from. Marcus, how do you feel about a drive? 20 minutes later, they were navigating through the city's industrial district. Marcus drove in silence while Aria watched the neighborhoods deteriorate from manicured estates to working-class homes to abandoned warehouses. She'd never been in this part of the city, and the contrast was jarring. They pulled up to a building that looked condemned from the outside, but revealed its true nature as they approached. Security cameras tracked their movement. The door opened before Marcus knocked, and a woman with cold eyes and a shoulder holster gestured them inside. The interior was nothing like the exterior. Expensive furniture, art that probably cost more than most people's homes, technology that looked military-grade. This was Victor's real world, Aria realized, the power behind the polished facade he showed at charity galas. He's upstairs, the woman said. Second door on the left. You have 30 minutes before his next meeting. Marcus stayed downstairs while Aria climbed the stairs on trembling legs. The second door was slightly ajar, and she could hear Victor's voice, sharp, commanding, nothing like the gentle tone he'd used with her. I don't care what Petrov thinks. The agreement was clear. If he wants to renegotiate, he can do it through proper channels, not by shorting our shipment and pretending it's a miscommunication. A pause. No. No more warnings. Hit him where it hurts, his distribution network in the port. Make sure everyone knows why. Aria knocked softly, and the conversation cut off immediately. Come in. Victor stood behind a massive desk, phone still in hand, looking every inch the dangerous man her mother had warned her about. But when his eyes found hers, his expression softened infinitesimally. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, then set it aside. You heard that. Some of it. Aria closed the door behind her. Should I be concerned? Probably, but that's not what we need to discuss. Victor moved around the desk, but didn't approach her, maintaining careful distance. Your mother knows about us. She made that abundantly clear at breakfast. Threatened to cut me off if I don't end things with you immediately and fall in line with her plans for my life. Something flickered across Victor's face. Anger, concern, something darker. And what did you say? I told her to do it. Cut me off, take the money, all of it. I'm done being bought. Victor closed his eyes briefly. Aria. Don't tell me I made a mistake. Don't tell me I should have negotiated or compromised or played it safe. She moved closer. I'm tired of safe, Victor. Safe has gotten me nowhere except trapped in a life I don't want. Safe keeps you alive, which is more than I can guarantee if you tie yourself to me. He finally looked at her, and the anguish in his eyes was stark. Do you understand what you've just done? You've painted a target on your back, made yourself vulnerable in ways you can't even comprehend yet. Then help me comprehend. Stop trying to protect me from reality and just show me what I'm dealing with. You want reality? Victor's voice turned harsh. Fine. Here's reality. I have enemies who would love nothing more than to find a weakness they can exploit. A woman I care about? That's the ultimate weakness. They'll come after you to hurt me, and I'll have to make impossible choices about who to sacrifice and who to save. And you think my mother's world is any safer? She spent my entire life making me a pawn in her games. At least with you, I'm choosing my own danger. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Probably, but it's my stupid choice to make. Aria closed the distance between them, placing her hands on his chest. She could feel his heart racing beneath her palms. I'm not asking you to save me, Victor. I'm asking you to stop trying to push me away for my own good. I'm a grown woman who understands risk. Let me decide what I'm willing to gamble." Victor's hands came up to cover hers, his grip almost painfully tight. "You're gambling with your life. So are you. Every day. Should I tell you to stop? That's different. Is it? Or is it just that you're used to being the one who makes the dangerous choices while everyone else stays safe?" She looked up at him, seeing the conflict written across his features. "My grandmother trusted you to help me, not to make my decisions for me. Your grandmother didn't know I'd fall for you." The admission came out rough, almost angry. "She asked me to protect you, and instead I've become the biggest threat to your safety." Aria's breath caught. "You've fallen for me?" Victor's laugh was bitter. "Of course I have. You're brilliant and fierce, and you look at me like I'm a person instead of a weapon. You make me want to be something better than what I am, which is both the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me." "Why is it the worst?" "Because wanting to be better doesn't change what I actually am. I've killed people, Aria, ordered executions, destroyed lives, built an empire on fear and violence. I can't undo any of that, and bringing you into this world means exposing you to all the ugliness I've spent decades creating." Aria pulled his head down until their foreheads touched. "I'm a trauma surgeon. I've spent 5 years elbow deep in people's worst moments. I've seen what violence does, what cruelty looks like, how fragile life really is. You don't scare me, Victor. The idea of living a safe, controlled life where I never get to choose anything for myself, that terrifies me. You should be scared of me. Probably, but I'm not. I'm scared of losing myself to my mother's expectations. I'm scared of waking up 30 years from now full of regret like my father. I'm scared of never knowing what we could be if we stopped running from this." She kissed him softly. "I'm not scared of you." Victor's control shattered. He kissed her with desperate intensity, walking her backward until she hit the desk. His hands cupped her face, angled her head, devoured her like a man starving for something he'd denied himself too long. Aria kissed him back with equal hunger, years of loneliness and suppression and desperate need pouring into the contact. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulled him closer, demanded more. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "This is a terrible idea," he murmured. "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." But his hands were gentle on her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with something like reverence. "If we do this, really do this, there's no going back. Your family will disown you, society will shun you, my world will try to destroy you just to hurt me. Then we'll face it together." Together. Victor tested the word like it was foreign. "I haven't done together in a very long time." "Neither have I. Guess we'll both be learning." He kissed her again, softer this time, but no less intense. When he pulled back, his expression was deadly serious. "If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right, which means protecting you properly, teaching you to navigate my world, making sure that anyone who even thinks about using you against me regrets it for whatever short time they have left." That's very romantic in a terrifying sort of way. "I'm not a romantic man, Aria. I'm a practical one. And practically speaking, you need training." "Training for what?" "For survival in a world where everyone's looking for weaknesses to exploit. Self-defense, situational awareness, understanding the players and power structures, knowing who to trust and who to fear." Victor's eyes held hers steadily. "You want to be in my world? Fine. But you're going to learn how to protect yourself in it, because I can't watch you every second of every day." "When do we start?" "Today. Now. Marcus is waiting downstairs. He's going to be your primary instructor. Ex-Delta Force, specialized in executive protection and close quarters combat. He'll teach you to fight, to shoot, to recognize threats before they materialize." Aria's heart raced with equal parts fear and exhilaration. "You've thought this through." "I've thought about nothing else since I kissed you last night. I've run every scenario, calculated every risk, tried to find a way to make this work without putting you in danger." His jaw tightened. "There isn't one. But I can minimize the risk. I can give you tools to defend yourself. I can make sure that anyone who comes after you knows exactly what they're dealing with." "And what are they dealing with?" Victor's smile was sharp, dangerous, and utterly captivating. "A woman under my protection, which means if they hurt you, I'll burn their entire world to the ground and salt the earth where it stood. The vow should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had in weeks. A knock on the door interrupted the moment. The cold-eyed woman from downstairs poked her head in. Your 11 o'clock is here, wants to know if you need more time. Tell Petrov I'll see him in 5 minutes. Victor waited until she left, then turned back to Aria. I have to deal with this. Business that can't wait. But Marcus will take you to the training facility, get you started on the basics. What kind of basics? How to throw a punch without breaking your thumb, how to recognize when you're being followed, how to field strip and reassemble a Glock. He saw her expression and almost smiled. You wanted reality. This is what my reality looks like. Okay. Aria took a breath, steadying herself. Okay, I can do this. I know you can. You're stronger than you realize. Victor kissed her forehead gently. But Aria, be prepared for this to get ugly. Your mother isn't going to take your defiance lying down. She'll fight back, and she'll fight dirty. Let her. I'm done being afraid of her. Good. Because the moment you walked away from her this morning, you declared independence. Now we make sure you can maintain it. Downstairs, Marcus was waiting with an expression that suggested he knew exactly what had just happened upstairs. Ready for boot camp, Doc? Do I have a choice? You always have a choice. But if you're serious about this thing with Victor, you need skills. His world doesn't forgive weakness, and it absolutely doesn't tolerate liability. Marcus led her to the car. I'm going to teach you to be neither. The training facility was hidden in plain sight, a boxing gym in a rough neighborhood where nobody asked questions. Marcus led her past the public areas to a private room in the back, equipped with mats, punching bags, and enough weapons to outfit a small army. First lesson, Marcus said, tossing her a pair of training gloves. The best fight is the one you avoid, but when you can't avoid it, you fight to win. No fair play, no holding back. You fight like your life depends on it, because it probably does. The next 2 hours were brutal. Marcus taught her basic defensive positions, how to break holds, where to strike to disable an attacker. He was patient but demanding, correcting her form repeatedly until her muscles screamed. Again, he said for what felt like the 100th time. You're telegraphing your movements. I can see what you're going to do before you do it. Aria threw another punch, trying to incorporate his corrections. This time, it landed solidly on the pad he was holding. Better. Now do it 50 more times until it's muscle memory. By the time they finished, Aria was drenched in sweat and shaking with exhaustion. But she also felt powerful in a way she never had before. Capable. Dangerous, even. Not bad for day one, Marcus said, tossing her a water bottle. Tomorrow we'll work on firearms, then surveillance detection, then tactical driving. You've got about 6 weeks before Victor's enemies figure out you're a permanent fixture instead of a temporary distraction. We need you ready before then. 6 weeks to learn everything you know? 6 weeks to learn enough to survive. The rest comes with experience. Marcus studied her seriously. This isn't a game, Doc. The people in Victor's world, they'll smile at you while planning your kidnapping. They'll act civilized while calculating exactly how to use you for maximum leverage. You need to learn to see through the masks. How do I do that? By understanding what people want and what they're willing to do to get it. Victor wants to protect you because he cares. Your mother wants to control you because she's afraid. His enemies want to hurt you because it hurts him. Everyone has an agenda. Your job is to figure out what it is before they use it against you. The lesson settled over Aria like a weight. She was entering a world where trust was currency and vulnerability was weakness, where the people who smiled brightest often hid the sharpest knives. I can handle it, she said, more to convince herself than Marcus. Yeah, I think you can. He handed her a gym bag. Fresh clothes in there. Get changed. Victor wants to see you before you go home. 15 minutes later, cleaned up but still exhausted, Aria found Victor in his office. He'd changed too, his earlier business suit replaced by dark jeans and a fitted shirt that somehow made him look even more dangerous. How was training? He asked without preamble. Brutal, educational, slightly terrifying. Aria collapsed into the chair across from his desk. Marcus is very good at what he does. The best. If anyone can prepare you for this world, it's him. Victor slid a folder across the desk. These are for you. Aria opened it to find bank statements, legal documents, property deeds. What is this? Your independence. I've set up accounts in your name, transferred property titles, established trust funds that your mother can't touch. If she follows through on her threat to cut you off, you'll have resources. Not charity. Consider it payment for the headache you're about to cause both our families. Aria stared at the papers, her throat tight. Victor, I can't accept this. You can and you will, because I refuse to let your mother use money as a weapon against you. His voice was firm. You made a choice today. A brave, stupid, incredibly risky choice. But it was your choice. These resources ensure you can stick with it, even when things get difficult. This is too much. It's barely enough. Do you know what your trust fund was worth before your mother threatened to freeze it? This is a fraction of what you're legally entitled to. I'm just making sure you can access capital while the lawyers fight over the rest. Aria looked up at him, seeing the determination in his eyes. He wasn't trying to buy her or control her. He was giving her weapons for the war she'd just declared. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started. Victor came around the desk, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. Your mother is going to escalate. She'll try to discredit you, isolate you, turn your father against you. She'll use every resource at her disposal to break this relationship and force you back into line. Let her try. That's my girl. He kissed her softly. But Aria, when things get bad, and they will get bad, remember why you chose this. Remember that you're fighting for yourself, not just for us. Because the moment you start second-guessing, Catherine will smell blood in the water. I won't second-guess. You might, and that's okay. Just come to me when you do. We'll figure it out together. The word together still sounded strange coming from him, like he was testing out a foreign language. But there was promise in it, commitment that went deeper than his usual strategic calculations. Aria kissed him again, pouring all her certainty and fear and desperate hope into the contact. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, she forced herself to step back. I should go. Face whatever fresh hell my mother has planned for round 2. Marcus will drive you. And Aria, keep your phone on you at all times. If anything feels wrong, even slightly off, you call me immediately. Understood? Understood. The drive back to the estate felt like traveling between two different worlds. Victor's domain of violence and power, her mother's kingdom of control and manipulation. And somehow, Aria was now caught between both, belonging fully to neither. The house was dark when they arrived, most of the staff already gone for the day. Marcus walked her to the door, his presence solid and reassuring. Your mother's going to make tonight difficult, he said quietly. Remember your training. Stay calm. Don't let her bait you. Keep your center. You think she's going to attack tonight? I think Catherine DeLuca doesn't believe in waiting when she can act. Whatever she's planning, she'll execute soon. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. But soon. He squeezed her shoulder once. You've got this, Doc. And if you don't, you've got me. Aria nodded and stepped inside. Her mother was waiting in the study, a glass of wine in hand and an expression of terrible calm on her face. We need to talk about your future, Catherine said. Sit down. Aria remained standing. I thought we already had this conversation. That was me giving you a chance to make the right choice. You declined. So now we discuss consequences. Catherine set down her wine glass with deliberate precision. I've spoken with your father. He's agreed that your trust fund should be frozen pending a psychiatric evaluation. Aria's stomach dropped. You can't be serious. You're exhibiting erratic behavior, making dangerous choices, associating with criminals. Any reasonable person would be concerned about your mental state. Catherine's smile was cold. The evaluation is scheduled for Monday. If you pass, the funds are released. If you don't, you'll be placed under conservatorship until you're deemed stable enough to manage your own affairs. That's insane. You can't just have me declared incompetent because I won't do what you want. I can if I have medical professionals willing to testify that you're a danger to yourself. And I do. Catherine pulled out a folder, matching Victor's gesture from earlier, but poisonous instead of protective. Dr. Patterson has agreed to oversee the evaluation. He's very concerned about your recent behavior, especially your association with Victor Romano. You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting you from yourself. There's a difference. Catherine's voice softened slightly, almost genuinely concerned. Aria, I don't want to do this, but you've left me no choice. If you'll just agree to end this relationship, attend the evaluation voluntarily, and commit to making better choices, we can forget this whole mess. Better choices meaning the choices you approve of. Choices that don't involve crime bosses and dangerous criminals, yes. Aria felt the walls closing in, her mother's trap springing exactly as Victor had warned. But she also felt the weight of the phone in her pocket, the knowledge that she had resources now, allies, options her mother didn't know about. "I'll attend your evaluation," Aria said calmly, "and I'll pass. Because there's nothing wrong with my mental state except that I've finally realized I don't have to live according to your fear." Catherine's expression flickered with something, surprise maybe, or concern that her daughter wasn't folding as expected. "We'll see what Dr. Patterson has to say about that." "Yes, we will." Aria walked out before her mother could respond, her heart pounding but her head high. In her room, she locked the door and immediately called Victor. He answered on the first ring. "What happened?" "My mother's trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. Psychiatric evaluation Monday, with Dr. Patterson overseeing it. She's going to use it to freeze my trust fund and possibly put me under conservatorship." Victor was silent for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "She's escalating faster than I expected. Can she actually do this? With the right doctors and enough money? Yes. But she's made a mistake." "What mistake?" "She's chosen a battlefield where I have resources too. Dr. Patterson may be in her pocket, but I know several psychiatrists who owe me favors. And more importantly, her move is aggressive enough to justify aggressive countermeasures." "What kind of countermeasures?" "The kind where I make sure everyone knows exactly what Catherine DeLuca is doing and why. The kind where her attempt to control you becomes public enough that it backfires spectacularly." His voice was cold, calculated. "She wanted war. Now she'll get it." Aria closed her eyes, feeling the inevitability of the conflict ahead. "This is really happening. It was always going to happen. Your mother was never going to let you go without a fight." Victor's voice softened slightly. "But you're not alone in this, Aria. Remember that. Whatever she throws at you, we'll handle it together." There was that word again. Together. Aria clung to it like a lifeline as she prepared for the battle ahead. The weekend passed in tense preparation. Victor's lawyers arrived Saturday morning, sharp-eyed men and women who spoke in legal terminology and strategic options. They sat around the conference table in one of Victor's legitimate business offices, analyzing Catherine's move from every angle. "The conservatorship angle is aggressive but not unprecedented," said Elena Marsh, Victor's lead attorney, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and a reputation for destroying opposing counsel. "If she can demonstrate that Dr. DeLuca is making decisions that pose a danger to herself or others, a judge might grant temporary conservatorship pending further evaluation." "She can't prove that because it's not true," Aria said, trying to keep the frustration from her voice. "Truth is flexible in these situations. What matters is what she can make appear true." Elena pulled out a tablet, scrolling through notes. "Dr. Patterson's reputation is impeccable. If he testifies that you're exhibiting concerning behavior, associating with known criminals, making rash financial decisions, emotional instability following your grandmother's death, a sympathetic judge might err on the side of caution." Victor's hand found Aria's under the table, squeezing gently. "What are our options?" "Several. First, we can challenge the evaluation itself. Argue that Dr. Patterson has a conflict of interest given his professional relationship with Mrs. DeLuca and the hospital she's donated millions to. Request an independent evaluator." "My mother will fight that," Aria said. "Of course she will." Which brings us to option 2. We let the evaluation proceed but stack the deck in our favor. Elena's smile was sharp. "I know 3 psychiatrists who would be happy to provide second opinions. We document everything: your professional accomplishments, your sound decision-making over the past 5 years, character references from colleagues in London. We build a case that you're a competent adult making informed choices, even if those choices don't align with your mother's preferences." "And option 3, Victor asked. "We go nuclear. Expose exactly why Mrs. DeLuca is doing this. Make it public that she's using psychiatric evaluation as a weapon to control her adult daughter. The optics are terrible. Wealthy socialite tries to have successful doctor declared incompetent for dating the wrong man. The press would eat it alive." Aria's stomach churned. "That would destroy my family's reputation." It would destroy your mother's ability to use that reputation as leverage, Elena corrected. Right now, she's counting on you being too afraid of scandal to fight back properly. We remove that weapon from her arsenal. At what cost? Aria looked at Victor. You said yourself that escalation brings consequences. If we go public, there's no walking this back. There's already no walking it back, Victor said quietly. The moment your mother threatened conservatorship, she declared total war. We can either respond proportionally or let her win by default. The weight of the decision pressed down on Aria's shoulders. Going public meant exposing her family's dysfunction, confirming every whispered rumor about the DeLucas, making herself the center of a scandal that would follow her for years. But submitting to her mother's evaluation meant giving Catherine exactly what she wanted, proof that Aria couldn't make her own decisions, justification for permanent control. We fight, Aria said finally. All three options: challenge the evaluation, build our own case, and if necessary, go public. But we do it smart, not reckless. Elena nodded approvingly. Smart is exactly how we'll play it. I'll file motions Monday morning requesting an independent evaluator. Meanwhile, Dr. Chen, she's a psychiatrist who specializes in cases exactly like this, will conduct her own assessment. We'll have documentation ready before your mother's evaluation even takes place. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, mapping out strategy and contingencies. By the time they finished, Aria's head was spinning with legal terminology and potential outcomes. Victor walked her out to where Marcus waited with the car. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking garage, and Aria shivered despite her coat. You okay? Victor asked, turning her to face him. I'm about to have my mental competency questioned by a doctor my mother's paying. My family's about to implode spectacularly, and I'm trusting a man I've known less than 2 weeks to help me navigate all of it. She laughed shakily. So yeah, I'm fantastic. You can still walk away. Tell your mother you'll end things with me, take the hospital job, play by her rules. The evaluation goes away, your trust fund stays intact, life returns to uncomfortable normal. Is that what you want? What I want, Victor said carefully, is for you to make the choice you can live with. Not the brave choice or the defiant choice, the one that lets you sleep at night. Aria looked up at him, seeing the conflict in his eyes. He meant what he said. He'd let her walk away if that's what she needed. Would probably even help her do it, ensure her mother backed off, then disappear from her life like he'd never been there. The realization that he cared enough to offer that option made her choice easier. I can't live with submission anymore, she said. I spent 5 years building a life where I got to make my own decisions. Coming home, watching my mother try to dismantle all of that, realizing my whole family is built on lies and control, I can't go back to pretending that's okay. She took his face in her hands. And I can't walk away from this. From you. Even if it costs me everything. Victor's kiss was fierce and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the feel of her. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with emotion. Then we do this right. You attend the evaluation Monday. Answer honestly. Don't let Patterson bait you. Meanwhile, Elena works the legal angles and Dr. Chen documents your actual mental state. We make it impossible for your mother to win this. And when she escalates again? Because she will. Then we escalate right back, but Aria... He gripped her shoulders gently. Once we cross certain lines, there's no going back to civility. Your relationship with your mother will be permanently damaged. Your family might never forgive you. Are you prepared for that? My relationship with my mother is already damaged, and my family stopped being real family the moment they started seeing me as a strategic asset instead of a person. Aria's voice was steady despite the pain in her chest. I'm done trying to earn love from people who only offer it conditionally. Victor studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, then let's burn it all down. Sunday, Aria spent with Dr. Chen, a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and an unsettling ability to see through deflection. They met at a neutral location, a quiet office in a medical building far from the DeLuca estate. Your mother's attorney claims you're exhibiting signs of emotional instability and poor judgment, Dr. Chen said without preamble. I'm here to determine if that's true or if this is a case of familial control masquerading as concern. So let's start with the basics. How would you characterize your mental state right now? Stressed, grieving, angry at my family, but not unstable. Aria met her eyes directly. I'm making difficult choices that upset my mother. That doesn't make me incompetent. Tell me about these choices, specifically about your relationship with Victor Romano. For the next 2 hours, Aria laid it all out. Her grandmother's death, the suffocation of returning home, Catherine's immediate attempts at control. Victor's promise to her grandmother, the growing connection between them, the conscious decision to pursue something that defied every expectation. Dr. Chen listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions, taking notes in neat shorthand. "You're aware of Mr. Romano's reputation?" she asked. "His connections to organized crime, the violence associated with his business operations?" "I'm aware. I'm not naive about who he is or what his world involves. And yet you're choosing to be involved with him anyway. Why?" Aria considered the question carefully. "Because he's the first person since my grandmother who's treated me like a person instead of a resource. Because he's honest about his flaws instead of hiding them behind respectability. And because being with him, even knowing the risks, feels more authentic than any relationship I've had with my own family." That's a significant statement. You're essentially saying you trust a known criminal more than your own mother. I trust someone who's honest about being dangerous more than someone who pretends to have my best interests at heart while manipulating every aspect of my life. Aria's voice was firm. "My mother's not trying to protect me, Dr. Chen. She's trying to own me. There's a difference." Dr. Chen made more notes, then looked up with something like respect in her eyes. "For what it's worth, Dr. DeLuca, you strike me as one of the most clear-headed people I've evaluated in situations like this. You're making choices I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but you're doing so with full awareness of the consequences. That's not instability, that's agency. Will you tell that to the judge if my mother pushes this to court? I'll tell that to anyone who asks, including Dr. Patterson tomorrow." Dr. Chen closed her notebook. "One more question. If Victor Romano disappeared from your life tomorrow, would you still fight your mother's control?" Aria didn't hesitate. "Yes, because this isn't really about him. It's about me refusing to live according to someone else's script." Dr. Chen smiled. "Then you're going to be fine. Difficult, probably. Painful, definitely. But fine." That night, Aria couldn't sleep. She lay in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the evaluation tomorrow and everything that hung in the balance. Around 2 a.m, her phone buzzed. Victor's text was simple. "Can't sleep either. Want company?" Aria's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Meeting him tonight was reckless, especially with the evaluation looming. Her mother probably had people watching. It would give Catherine more ammunition, more proof of poor judgment. She typed back, "Yes." 20 minutes later, she slipped out through the same terrace doors she'd escaped through the night of the memorial. Marcus was waiting in the shadows, his expression unreadable. "Boss said you might need an extraction," he said quietly. "Car's around the corner." "My mother's going to know I left." "Your mother's going to know a lot of things soon. Might as well give her something real to be angry about." The drive took them out of the city, into the hills where estates gave way to forest and isolation. Victor's house, one of several properties he owned, sat on 5 private acres, all stone and glass and understated wealth. He was waiting on the front steps, still dressed despite the late hour. When Aria climbed out of the car, he pulled her into his arms without a word. "Stupid to come here," he murmured into her hair. "Probably. Your mother will use it against you tomorrow. Let her." Victor pulled back to look at her, his expression somewhere between exasperation and admiration. "You're either the bravest or most reckless woman I've ever met." "Can I be both?" He led her inside to a living room that was all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the forest. A fire burned in the stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the walls. "Couldn't sleep?" Victor asked, pouring them both whiskey. "Kept thinking about tomorrow, about how one evaluation might determine my entire future." Aria accepted the glass, letting the amber liquid burn her throat. "How did it come to this? A month ago, I was a surgeon in London with a clear path forward. Now I'm fighting my own mother for the right to make my own choices." "You were always going to have this fight. Your grandmother's death just accelerated the timeline." Victor settled beside her on the leather couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Catherine was never going to let you go easily. The question was whether you'd fight back or submit. And you knew I'd fight. Your grandmother knew you'd fight. She warned me you had her fire, that you'd burn everything down rather than live in a cage. I didn't fully believe her until I saw you walk away from your mother's threats without flinching. Aria leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. What happens if I lose tomorrow? If Dr. Patterson declares me incompetent and a judge agrees? Then we appeal. We fight it through every legal channel available. And if that fails, Victor's voice turned hard. Then we make sure your mother understands exactly what she started. She thinks she can use the legal system as a weapon? I've been navigating corrupt systems for 30 years. I know how to make judges reconsider, how to find leverage that changes outcomes. You're talking about intimidation, possibly blackmail. I'm talking about using every tool at my disposal to protect you. If that makes me a monster, so be it. I've been called worse. Aria should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual way he discussed corruption and manipulation. Instead, she felt a strange sense of security. Victor wasn't pretending to be noble or righteous. He was simply being honest about the lengths he'd go to. My grandmother really did choose the right person to protect me, she said quietly. She chose someone who understands power and isn't afraid to use it. Whether that makes me right is debatable. He set down his glass, turning to face her fully. But I need you to understand something. If tomorrow goes badly, if your mother succeeds in getting you declared incompetent, your life becomes exponentially more complicated. Conservatorship means she controls everything. Your money, your medical decisions, where you live, who you see. Fighting that from inside the system is nearly impossible. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to prepare you. Because the worst-case scenario isn't just losing tomorrow. It's losing and then being trapped in a situation where I can't easily reach you, where your mother has legal authority to keep us apart, where every move we make has to be covert and strategic. The reality of it settled over Aria like a shroud. She'd been so focused on defiance, on refusing to back down, that she hadn't fully considered what defeat might actually look like. So what do I do? She asked. How do I make sure I win? You go in tomorrow, calm, composed, and completely honest. You don't let Patterson bait you into emotional reactions. You answer his questions directly, acknowledge that you're making unconventional choices, but make it clear those choices are informed and deliberate. Victor's hand cupped her cheek. You show him the brilliant, capable doctor you are, not the rebellious daughter your mother wants him to see. And if that's not enough, then we move to Plan B. Elena files for an emergency stay. We get you in front of a different judge. We make enough noise that your mother's power play becomes too public to sustain quietly. His eyes held hers steadily. But I'd rather not get to Plan B. So tomorrow you give the performance of your life. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling and the forest darkness pressing against the windows. Aria felt the weight of tomorrow looming, but for now, in this moment, she let herself just be. No strategy, no planning, no fear, just the warmth of Victor beside her and the peace of knowing she wasn't facing this alone. Stay, Victor said quietly. The guest room is already prepared. Marcus can drive you back early enough that your mother won't know you were gone all night. She'll know anyway. Probably. But at least you'll have gotten some sleep first. Aria let him lead her upstairs to a guest room that was more luxurious than her bedroom at the estate. But when he turned to leave, she caught his hand. Stay with me, she said. I'm not asking for... I just don't want to be alone tonight. Victor's expression softened. He kicked off his shoes and stretched out on top of the covers, pulling her against his chest. Aria curled into him, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, his arms solid around her. Whatever happens tomorrow, he murmured into her hair, you're not alone in this. Remember that. Aria fell asleep to the rhythm of his breathing, feeling safer than she had in weeks. Morning came too soon. Marcus drove her back to the estate just after dawn, the city still quiet and gray. Aria slipped back inside to find her mother already awake, sitting at the breakfast table with her coffee and her righteous fury. Out all night with him, I presume, Catherine said without looking up. That's none of your business. Everything you do is my business until you prove you're capable of making rational decisions. Catherine finally met her eyes. The evaluation is at 10. Dr. Patterson expects you to be prompt, professional, and cooperative. I suggest you shower and make yourself presentable. Aria wanted to argue, to throw her mother's hypocrisy back in her face. But she remembered Victor's words. Stay calm. Don't take the bait. And simply nodded. I'll be ready. Dr. Patterson's office was in the medical building adjacent to Memorial Hospital, all sleek furniture and carefully curated credentials on the walls. He greeted Aria with professional warmth that didn't reach his eyes, clearly already knowing which side of this evaluation he was expected to land on. Dr. DeLuca, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. I understand this situation is difficult, but I want to assure you that my only concern is your well-being. Of course, Aria said neutrally. Your mother has expressed concerns about your recent behavior, erratic decision-making, association with individuals of questionable character, emotional instability following your grandmother's death. I'd like to discuss these concerns and get your perspective. For the next 90 minutes, Dr. Patterson probed every aspect of Aria's life with surgical precision. Her relationship with Victor, her decision to reject the hospital position, her confrontations with her mother, her late-night disappearances. Every question was designed to paint a picture of instability, of a woman spiraling out of control. But Aria had prepared for this. She answered calmly, acknowledged the unconventional nature of her choices while explaining the rational thinking behind them. When Patterson asked about Victor, she was honest about his background while emphasizing his promise to her grandmother and his genuine support of her autonomy. So you're aware that Mr. Romano has been investigated multiple times for racketeering, money laundering, and suspected involvement in violent crimes? Patterson asked. I'm aware of his reputation and the allegations against him, yes. And yet you're romantically involved with him. I'm choosing to pursue a relationship with someone who treats me with respect and honesty. His past doesn't erase his present actions toward me. Some would call that judgment significantly impaired. Some would call it making an informed choice as an adult. Aria kept her voice level. Dr. Patterson, I'm not denying that my choices are unconventional, but unconventional doesn't mean incompetent. I'm a successful surgeon who's been managing my own life independently for 5 years. The fact that my decisions don't align with my mother's preferences doesn't indicate mental instability. Patterson made notes, his expression unreadable. Let's talk about your relationship with your mother. She describes a pattern of increasing defiance and hostility. Would you agree with that characterization? I'd characterize it as establishing appropriate boundaries with a parent who's accustomed to complete control. She's concerned you're isolating yourself from family support systems. She's concerned I'm not letting her dictate my life anymore. There's a difference. The evaluation continued, circling the same themes from different angles. Patterson was good, careful never to seem overtly hostile, maintaining the veneer of professional concern while systematically building a case for instability. But Aria was better. She'd spent 5 years dealing with arrogant surgeons, navigating hospital politics, holding her ground in high-pressure situations. Patterson's subtle manipulation was nothing compared to trying to save a trauma patient while the attending questioned every decision. Finally, he set down his pen. I appreciate your cooperation, Dr. DeLuca. I'll need a few days to complete my evaluation and prepare my report. And what will that report say? That depends on what I determine after reviewing all the information. His smile was professionally vague. I'll be in touch with your mother and her attorney by the end of the week. Aria left the building feeling like she'd just completed the most important exam of her life, unsure if she'd passed or failed. Marcus was waiting in the car, his expression questioning. How'd it go? Either really well or really badly. Hard to tell. Aria collapsed into the back seat. He's definitely in my mother's pocket, but I don't think I gave him anything he can use to justify incompetence. Whether that's enough? Her phone rang. Elena Marsh. Dr. Chen's preliminary report just landed on my desk, the attorney said without preamble. It's glowing. Detailed assessment of your mental competency, professional achievements, clear decision-making processes. She's explicitly stating that your choices, while unconventional, show no signs of impairment or instability. Relief flooded through Aria. That's good, right? It's ammunition. If Patterson tries to claim incompetence, we have a second opinion from an equally qualified psychiatrist saying the opposite. Makes your mother's case significantly weaker. Elena paused. But I need to warn you. If Patterson does side with your mother, this becomes a he said, she said situation. And in those cases, the judge often orders a third independent evaluation, which means more delays, more legal fees, more time for your mother to maintain temporary restrictions on your finances. How long could this drag out? Months. Possibly longer if your mother's determined to fight. Aria closed her eyes, feeling exhaustion settle into her bones. What do we do now? We wait for Patterson's report. In the meantime, I'm filing preventative motions, arguing that any financial restrictions would be premature pending resolution of the evaluation, requesting that any conservatorship hearing be public rather than closed door. We make it as difficult as possible for your mother to win quietly. After the call ended, Aria sat in silence while Marcus drove her back to Victor's office. She felt hollowed out, wrung dry from the emotional warfare of the past few days. Victor took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms. The evaluation was inconclusive at best, she said against his chest. Patterson's in my mother's pocket, but I didn't give him anything obvious to use. Dr. Chen's report is good. Elena's filing motions. And now we wait. Waiting is the hardest part. I hate waiting. I know. Victor guided her to the couch in his office, settling her against him. But sometimes the best strategy is patience. Let your mother make the next move, then respond from a position of strength. I don't feel strong right now. I feel tired. Tired is different from defeated. His hand stroked through her hair gently. You walked into that evaluation knowing Patterson was stacked against you, and you held your ground. That takes strength, even if it doesn't feel like it. They sat in silence for a while, Aria drawing comfort from his presence. Outside the windows, the city moved through its Monday afternoon rhythm, oblivious to the personal war being waged in expensive offices and legal filings. Victor, Aria said quietly, if this goes badly, if my mother wins and gets conservatorship, she won't. But if she does, what happens to us? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then we get creative, find ways to see each other that she can't legally prevent. Use every loophole, every technicality, every gray area in the conservatorship order. I didn't build an empire by accepting the rules as written, Aria. I built it by finding ways around obstacles that seemed insurmountable. That sounds exhausting. It will be. But the alternative, letting your mother win, walking away from this. His arms tightened around her. Shimo, I'm not willing to accept that alternative. Are you? No? Aria turned to look up at him. But I'm scared. Of losing, of being trapped, of discovering that defiance isn't enough. Defiance is never enough by itself. You need strategy, resources, allies willing to fight beside you. Victor's eyes held hers steadily. But you have all of that. Elena's one of the best attorneys in the state. Marcus would walk through fire for you. Dr. Chen's report gives you professional credibility. And me? He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I'm not going anywhere, Aria. Whatever this costs or whatever it takes, I'm seeing it through. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why are you so invested in this? My grandmother's promise only goes so far. What are you really getting out of helping me? Victor's expression shifted, vulnerability cracking through his usual controlled facade. You want the truth? Always. I'm getting the chance to be something other than what I've always been. With you, I'm not Victor Romano, the crime boss, the monster in expensive suits, the man people fear and flatter and never trust. He struggled for words. I'm just Victor. Someone who can have a real conversation, make someone laugh, be valued for something other than power and fear. His honesty hit Aria straight in the chest. You're valued for more than that. By you, no one else. His thumb traced her cheekbone gently. Your grandmother saw something in me worth protecting. You see something in me worth choosing, despite every logical reason to run the other direction. That's not nothing, Aria. That's everything. She kissed him then, pouring all her fear and gratitude and desperate hope into the contact. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Aria rested her forehead against his. We're going to get through this, she said. Whatever my mother throws at us, whatever Patterson's report says, we'll handle it. Together, Victor confirmed. The word had become their anchor, the promise that kept them both fighting when everything else seemed impossible. They didn't know it yet, but their worst fears were about to become reality, and the war was just beginning. 3 days later, Patterson's report arrived. Aria was at the training facility with Marcus, working on firearms technique, when Elena called. She stepped outside to take it, her hands already shaking. "Patterson sided with your mother," Elena said without preamble. "His report characterizes your behavior as evidence of emotional dysregulation and impaired judgment. He's recommending a temporary conservatorship pending further evaluation and treatment." The world tilted. Aria leaned against the building's brick wall, forcing air into her lungs. "What does that mean, specifically?" "It means your mother's attorney will file for emergency conservatorship, probably within the next 24 hours. They'll request immediate restrictions on your financial accounts and medical decision-making authority. The judge will likely grant temporary measures until a full hearing can be held." "When's the hearing?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. "But Aria, in the interim, your mother gets what she wants. Control over your assets, ability to restrict your movements, legal authority to make decisions on your behalf." "Can she keep me from seeing Victor?" Elena hesitated, which was answer enough. "She can try. Conservatorship gives her broad authority. Whether she can legally enforce it is debatable, but she can make it difficult enough that seeing him becomes nearly impossible without violating the court order." Aria felt the cage closing, the trap springing exactly as her mother had planned. "What are our options?" "We file our own emergency motion citing Dr. Chen's report. We argue that Patterson has a conflict of interest. We request expedited hearing dates. We make this as public and messy as possible so your mother can't operate quietly." Elena's voice hardened. "But I won't lie to you, Aria. This just got significantly more difficult. Patterson's report gives the judge legal cover to err on the side of caution, which means temporary restrictions while the case proceeds. How long could I be under conservatorship? Worst case, months, until we can prove to a judge's satisfaction that you're competent to make your own decisions. Best case, a few weeks until the hearing where we present Dr. Chen's report and challenge Patterson's findings." Elena paused. "But either way, the next few weeks are going to be hard. Your mother has legal authority now. She's going to use it." After the call ended, Aria stood outside the training facility, feeling the full weight of her situation. She'd defied her mother, chosen Victor, fought for her autonomy. And now it was all being stripped away by a psychiatrist's report and a legal system that sided with parental control over adult agency. Marcus found her there, took one look at her face, and immediately called Victor. "Patterson's report came in," was all Aria managed to say when Victor arrived 20 minutes later. "My mother won." "No." Victor's voice was hard as steel. "She won a battle, not the war. There's a difference. She gets conservatorship, Victor. Legal authority to control every aspect of my life. How is that not winning?" "Because conservatorship is temporary until proven otherwise. Because we have Dr. Chen's report to counter Patterson's. Because your mother just made a move aggressive enough that going public stops being optional and starts being strategic necessity." He gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. She wanted a quiet victory. Instead, she's about to get the messiest, most public fight of her life. And when the dust settles, everyone will know exactly what Catherine DeLuca did to her own daughter. And if that's not enough, if the judge sides with her anyway, Victor's expression turned cold, dangerous. "Then I stop playing by the rules. I use every resource, every connection, every piece of leverage I have to make sure your mother regrets the day she declared war on us. Legal, illegal, moral, immoral, I don't care. You're not spending months under her control. That's not happening." The vow should have terrified Aria. Instead, it felt like a lifeline. "What's the first move?" she asked. Victor's smile was sharp and utterly ruthless. "We make your mother famous for all the wrong reasons, and then we watch her empire crumble." The story broke 3 days later, splashed across the front page of the city's most prestigious newspaper with a headline that made Catherine DeLuca's careful empire shudder. "Socialite uses psychiatric system to control adult daughter's romance." The article was devastating in its precision. It detailed Catherine's attempts to force Aria into conservatorship, Dr. Patterson's financial ties to the DeLuca Family Foundation, the psychiatric evaluation used as a weapon rather than genuine medical concern. Side-by-side quotes from Dr. Chen's report, and Patterson's painted a picture of manipulation so blatant that even sympathetic readers couldn't ignore it. But the real damage came from the personal angle. The journalist, someone Victor knew, someone who owed him favors, had somehow obtained copies of text messages between Catherine and Dr. Patterson discussing outcomes before the evaluation ever took place. The implication of predetermined conclusions was damning. Aria read the article in Victor's office, her hands trembling. "This is going to destroy her." "That's the point," Victor said coldly. "She tried to destroy you first. This is proportional response." "My father, he's going to be caught in the crossfire. He didn't want any of this." "Your father stood by and let it happen. That makes him complicit." Victor's voice softened slightly at Aria's expression. "I know you want to protect him, but Marcus, he made his choice years ago when he decided comfort was more important than courage. Now he gets to live with the consequences." The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. By noon, 3 major hospital boards had requested Catherine's resignation. The DeLuca Family Foundation faced calls for investigation into its charitable giving practices. Social invitations dried up overnight as the city's elite distanced themselves from the scandal. And in a delicious twist of irony, Dr. Patterson found himself under review by the medical board for ethical violations. Catherine's response came that afternoon. A restraining order against Victor, claiming he'd manipulated and endangered her daughter. The legal filing accused him of everything from undue influence to potential kidnapping, painting Aria as a victim of predatory manipulation rather than an adult making her own choices. Elena Marsh read the filing and actually laughed. "She's desperate. This is going to backfire spectacularly." "How?" Aria asked. They were gathered in Victor's conference room. Aria, Victor, Elena, Marcus, and 2 of Victor's most trusted associates. A war council assembled to navigate the escalating conflict. Because restraining orders require evidence of actual harm or credible threat. All she has is speculation and maternal hysteria. Elena tapped the document. "Meanwhile, we have documented proof of her attempting to use psychiatric evaluation as a control mechanism. The judge who hears this is going to see exactly what it is, a desperate attempt to regain leverage after losing the public relations battle." "When's the hearing?" Victor asked. "Tomorrow morning. Emergency session. Catherine's pushing hard for immediate enforcement." Elena's smile was sharp. "Which gives us less than 24 hours to prepare our counter-argument." They worked through the night, building a case that was equal parts legal strategy and public theater. If Catherine wanted to make this a spectacle, they'd give her a spectacle, complete with character witnesses, documented timeline of her controlling behavior, and expert testimony about the misuse of psychiatric evaluation for non-medical purposes. Around 3 in the morning, Aria found herself alone with Victor in his office while the others took a break. She was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, terrified of what tomorrow might bring. "What if we lose?" she asked quietly. "What if the judge grants the restraining order and the conservatorship?" Victor pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her. "Then we appeal. And while we appeal, we get creative about how to see each other. Conservatorship doesn't mean prison, Aria. Your mother can make things difficult, but she can't make them impossible. Not if we're smart about it." "I'm so tired of fighting." "I know, but you're also winning. Look at what's happened in the last 3 days. Your mother's reputation is in shambles, her social standing destroyed, her attempt at quiet control exploded into public scandal. She's lost almost everything she spent decades building, all because she underestimated your willingness to fight back. At what cost, though? My family's destroyed, my father's caught in the middle. Even if we win tomorrow, the damage is done." "The damage was always there," Victor said gently. "You didn't create it by refusing to be controlled. You just exposed it by insisting on the truth. That's not your fault, Aria. That's on your mother for building an empire on manipulation and your father for enabling it." Aria leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. "What happens after tomorrow? If we win, then we start building something real. A life on our terms, not defined by your family's expectations or my reputation. Something honest and messy and probably complicated as hell." His hand tilted her chin up so she met his eyes. "But something ours. Completely and entirely ours." The promise in his words made her chest ache with hope and fear in equal measure. The courtroom the next morning was packed. Catherine had clearly expected a quiet proceeding. Instead, she walked into a media circus. Cameras lined the hallway, reporters shouted questions, and the public gallery filled with spectators drawn by the scandal. Catherine's face was a mask of barely controlled fury as she took her seat with her attorney. Aria sat across the aisle with Elena, Victor conspicuously absent per the restraining order's temporary restrictions. But his presence was felt in the quality of the legal team, in the detailed evidence they'd compiled, in the coordinated strategy that had backed Catherine into this very public corner. Judge Margaret Chen, no relation to Dr. Chen, was a woman in her 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and zero tolerance for legal manipulation. She surveyed the crowded courtroom with obvious disapproval. "This is a hearing on an emergency restraining order, not a media event," she said sharply. "I'd better not see any of this proceeding on social media within the next hour, or I'll hold someone in contempt. Am I clear?" The room settled into tense silence. Catherine's attorney stood. "Your Honor, we're seeking immediate enforcement of a restraining order against Victor Romano, who has systematically manipulated and endangered Dr. Aria De Luca through a combination of romantic involvement and professional isolation. We have evidence that Mr. Romano has used his influence to turn Dr. De Luca against her family, damage her professional reputation, and place her in situations of significant personal risk." Elena rose smoothly. "Your Honor, what we actually have is a mother attempting to use the legal system to control her adult daughter's romantic choices. Mrs. De Luca has already tried and failed to use psychiatric evaluation as a weapon. Now she's trying restraining orders. The pattern is clear and disturbing." For the next 2 hours, both sides presented their cases. Catherine's attorney painted Victor as a dangerous criminal preying on a vulnerable woman. Elena countered with documentation of Catherine's manipulation, the predetermined nature of Dr. Patterson's evaluation, and most damaging, testimony from Dr. Chen about Aria's clear mental competency and autonomous decision-making. Then Elena called Aria to testify. Walking to the witness stand felt like crossing a battlefield. Aria could feel her mother's gaze burning into her back, could sense the weight of everyone's expectations. But when she sat down and met Judge Chen's eyes, she felt something like calm settle over her. Elena's questions were precise, designed to establish Aria's competency and autonomous choice. Aria answered steadily, detailing her relationship with Victor, her reasons for the choices she'd made, her understanding of the risks involved. "Dr. De Luca," Elena asked, "do you feel manipulated or endangered by your relationship with Mr. Romano?" "No, I feel seen and supported in ways my family never provided. Victor has been honest about who he is and what his world involves. He's given me resources and training to protect myself rather than trying to control my choices. That's the opposite of manipulation." "And your mother's attempts to obtain conservatorship, how do you characterize those?" "As a last-ditch effort to maintain control after I refused to submit to her plans for my life. She's not trying to protect me. She's trying to own me. There's a difference." Catherine's attorney stood for cross-examination, his expression sympathetic. "Dr. De Luca, isn't it possible you're too close to the situation to see Mr. Romano's influence clearly? That what you perceive as support is actually calculated manipulation?" "I'm a trauma surgeon. I've been making life and death decisions under pressure for 5 years. I think I'm capable of recognizing manipulation when I see it. Yet you acknowledge that Mr. Romano has a documented history of criminal activity, violence, and strategic exploitation of relationships for business purposes. I acknowledge his reputation. I also acknowledge that he's kept every promise he's made to me, treated me with more respect than my own mother has, and given me autonomy rather than demanding submission. Judge people by their actions toward you, not their reputation." That's a very convenient position when you're romantically involved with someone. Aria leaned forward slightly. "What's convenient is my mother using psychiatric evaluation and legal systems as weapons when she couldn't control me through guilt and financial pressure. What's convenient is her suddenly caring about my well-being only when my choices don't align with her plans. At least Victor's honest about what he wants." The attorney tried several more angles, but Aria held firm. She'd spent too long letting other people define her narrative. Not anymore. When she stepped down, she caught her father's eye in the gallery. Marcus De Luca looked older than he had at the memorial, worn down by the scandal and his wife's increasingly desperate actions. He nodded once, just a small gesture, but something in it felt like acknowledgement, maybe even approval. Judge Chen called a recess to review the evidence. Aria found herself in the hallway, surrounded by Elena's team but feeling utterly alone. Through the windows, she could see the city spread below, the life she'd been fighting for, the freedom she'd risked everything to claim. Aria. She turned to find her father approaching, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. Behind him, Catherine stood with her attorney, radiating fury but maintaining distance. Dad? Can we talk? Just for a minute? He glanced at Elena, who nodded and stepped away slightly, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give them privacy. Marcus guided her to a quieter corner of the hallway. For a long moment, he just looked at her, something like grief in his eyes. I should have done this years ago, he said finally. Should have stood up to your mother, protected you from her need to control everything. But I was weak. Chose the easy path of letting her handle things while I buried myself in work and told myself it wasn't my problem. Dad, let me finish, please. He took a shaky breath. Your grandmother tried to tell me, said I was sacrificing you to keep peace with Catherine, that I'd regret it someday. I told her she was being dramatic, that Catherine just wanted what was best for the family. She wants what's best for her version of the family. There's a difference. I know that now. Watching her try to destroy you these past weeks, seeing how far she'll go to maintain control, it's like scales falling from my eyes. His voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry, Aria, for not protecting you, for enabling your mother's behavior, for being too much of a coward to choose you over my own comfort. Aria felt tears burning behind her eyes. You're choosing now. Too late, probably, but yes, I'm choosing now. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is a statement I'm submitting to the judge, detailing your mother's behavior, my complicity in it, and my support for your right to make your own choices, including your relationship with Victor Romano. Mom's going to lose her mind. Your mother lost her mind the moment she decided using psychiatric evaluation as a weapon was acceptable. I'm just done pretending otherwise. He pressed the envelope into her hands. I can't undo the past, can't give you back the years of freedom you deserved, but I can stop enabling the woman who tried to take them from you. Aria hugged him tightly, feeling his arms come around her with the kind of protective strength she'd needed her whole childhood but rarely received. When they separated, both had tears on their cheeks. What are you going to do? Aria asked. After this? Marcus smiled sadly. Probably get divorced, move out of the estate. Maybe finally apply to teach at that university your grandmother was always telling me about. Turns out, it's not too late to choose a different path. She'd be proud of you. She'd be proud of you, fighting back when I couldn't, refusing to settle for comfortable misery. He squeezed her shoulder. Whatever the judge decides, you did the right thing. Don't ever doubt that. The bailiff called them back before Aria could respond. She walked into that courtroom with her father's words echoing in her mind and his support giving her strength she hadn't known she needed. Judge Chen had returned to the bench, her expression unreadable. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony, she began, and I'm troubled by what I've seen. Not by Dr. DeLuca's choices, unconventional as they may be, but by the misuse of legal and medical systems to control an adult woman's autonomous decisions. Catherine's face went white. The request for a restraining order is denied. Dr. DeLuca is a competent adult who has clearly articulated her reasons for her relationship with Mr. Romano. Whether others approve of that relationship is irrelevant. She has the right to make her own choices, including choices that carry risk. Elena squeezed Aria's hand under the table. Furthermore, I'm disturbed by evidence suggesting predetermined outcomes in Dr. Patterson's evaluation. I'm referring this matter to the medical board for investigation into potential ethical violations, and I'm denying the conservatorship petition entirely, Mrs. DeLuca. Your attempt to use mental health systems as a control mechanism is exactly the kind of abuse these systems are designed to prevent. Catherine stood abruptly. Your Honor, my daughter is in danger. Your daughter is an adult making informed choices. The danger she faces appears to come primarily from your inability to accept her autonomy. Judge Chen's voice was sharp. This court will not be used to facilitate parental control masquerading as concern. Petition denied. We're adjourned. The gavel came down with a sound like liberation. The hallway erupted into chaos. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing, voices shouting questions. Elena hustled Aria through a side exit where Marcus was waiting with the car. They were 3 blocks away before Aria's hand stopped shaking. "We won," she whispered. "You won," Elena corrected. "You stood up there and told your truth without flinching. That's what tipped the scales." Aria's phone buzzed. Victor's text was simple. "My place. Now." He was waiting on the steps when they arrived, and the moment Aria was out of the car, she was in his arms. Victor held her like she was something precious and hard-won, his face buried in her hair. "It's over," Aria said against his chest. "The conservatorship, the restraining order, all of it. We won." "You won." Victor pulled back to look at her, his eyes intense. "You walked into that courtroom and claimed your life back. I just provided backup." Pretty significant backup. "Still your victory." He kissed her softly. "How do you feel?" "Exhausted, terrified, free." Aria laughed shakily. "Is it supposed to feel this overwhelming?" "Probably. You just dismantled your mother's empire and declared independence. That's not a small thing." They went inside and Aria collapsed onto the couch while Victor poured whiskey. Through the windows, the city spread out like possibility. The future suddenly wide open in ways it hadn't been since her grandmother's death. "What happens now?" Aria asked as Victor settled beside her. "Now? You decide what you want your life to look like. No mother dictating your choices, no conservatorship hanging over your head, just you and the future you choose." "That's terrifying." "Freedom usually is, but you've already done the hard part, fighting for the right to choose. Now you just have to figure out what you're choosing." Aria considered that, sipping her whiskey and feeling the weight of possibility. "I want to go back to London, finish out my contract at the hospital, tie up loose ends, pack up my apartment properly. Not running away, just completing something I started." Victor's expression flickered with something that might have been disappointment, but he nodded. "That makes sense. You have a life there you built on your own terms. You should honor that. And then I want to come back here, but not to my family's estate. I want my own place, my own practice eventually. Something built on my merit, not the DeLuca name. I can help with that. I know, but I need to do some of it myself. Need to prove to myself, maybe, that I can build a life without depending on family money or your resources." She looked at him. "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. You've spent weeks fighting for autonomy. Now you need to exercise it." Victor's hand found hers. "But Aria, when you come back, when you're ready to build that life here, I'd like to be part of it. If you'll have me." "That sounds suspiciously like a long-term commitment." "It is. Terrifying, probably stupid, definitely complicated. But I'm done pretending this is temporary or strategic. I want you in my life. Permanently, messily. However that works." Aria set down her glass and climbed into his lap, straddling him so she could see his face clearly. "You know what you're signing up for? I'm stubborn, opinionated, terrible at compromise, and apparently willing to burn down my entire family rather than submit to control. I'm a criminal with a violent past, trust issues, and a world that will spend years trying to use you against me. We're both disasters." Victor's smile was soft and real. "But we're honest disasters. That counts for something." "It counts for everything." She kissed him, pouring all her fear and hope and desperate love into the contact. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Aria rested her forehead against his. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of what comes next, of building a life in your world, of whether we can actually make this work." "Good. Fear means you're taking this seriously." Victor's hands cupped her face gently. "But Aria, we've already survived the worst of it. Your mother's attacks, the legal battles, the public scandal, everything else is just logistics. Logistics and occasional violence, presumably." "Occasional violence," he agreed. "But Marcus is teaching you to handle that. You'll be fine." They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans. Aria would return to London in 2 weeks, finish her contract over the next 3 months. Victor would visit when he could, but they'd be realistic about the distance and what it meant. When she came back, she'd find an apartment, look into hospital positions that weren't tainted by her family's influence, start building the life she'd always wanted. "What about your mother?" Victor asked. "Are you going to try to repair that relationship?" Aria considered the question seriously. Eventually, maybe, if she can accept that I'm not hers to control. But right now, I need space. Need to exist outside her sphere of influence and prove to myself that I can thrive without her approval. Fair enough. Though, for what it's worth, your father seems ready to choose differently. Dad's making his own journey. I'm glad he's finally standing up to her, but I can't be responsible for his choices any more than he should be responsible for mine. Aria paused. That's what I learned from all this, I think. Everyone's responsible for their own choices. My mother chose control over love. My father chose comfort over courage, until he didn't. I chose freedom over safety. And you chose to help a stranger because a dying woman asked you to. Not a stranger anymore. No, definitely not a stranger. The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful. Aria moved out of the DeLuca estate into a hotel while she prepared for London. Catherine didn't try to stop her, too busy managing the fallout from the court case and the dissolution of her social standing. The DeLuca name, once synonymous with power and respectability, was now attached to scandal and manipulation. Marcus DeLuca filed for divorce and moved into a modest apartment near the university where he'd accepted a teaching position. He and Aria had dinner once a week, slowly rebuilding a relationship damaged by years of his complicity and her resentment. Your grandmother would have loved this, he said one evening over pasta at a small Italian restaurant. You, free and thriving. Me, finally doing what I should have done decades ago. All of us choosing authenticity over comfort. She set it all in motion, Aria agreed. That letter, her promise to Victor, even her death, it forced everyone to confront truths we'd been avoiding. I miss her. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence, two people learning to be family in honest ways rather than obligatory ones. The night before Aria left for London, Victor threw a small gathering at his house. Just close friends, Marcus, Elena, a few of his trusted associates who'd become Aria's friends through the chaos of the past weeks. Dr. Chen even stopped by, bringing wine and congratulations. You're a case study now, she told Aria with a smile. How psychiatric evaluation can be misused, the importance of second opinions, the dangers of predetermined outcomes. I'm presenting on it at a conference next month. Glad my family drama could contribute to medical education. Your family drama exposed a systemic problem. That's not nothing. Later, when the guests had left and the house was quiet, Aria and Victor stood on the terrace overlooking the forest. The October air was crisp, carrying the smell of wood smoke and changing seasons. 3 months, Victor said quietly. That's how long until you're back permanently. You could visit. London's not that far. I will, but it won't be the same as having you here. He pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. I'm not good at waiting, Aria. Patience was never my strength. Then think of it as strategic distance. Time for me to finish what I started. For you to handle business without worrying about my safety every second. We'll talk every day, video calls, texts, whatever it takes. And when you come back? When I come back, we start building something real. Figure out what a life together actually looks like when we're not in constant crisis mode. She turned to face him. I love you, Victor. I should probably say that before I leave. His expression softened, vulnerability cracking through his usual controlled facade. I love you too. Have since that first night on the terrace, probably. Certainly since you kissed me in the back of my car and looked at me like I was someone worth choosing despite everything. You are worth choosing. Don't ever doubt that. They made love that night with desperate tenderness, storing up memories against the separation ahead. And when morning came, Victor drove her to the airport himself, ignoring Marcus's offer to handle it. Call me when you land, he said at the departure gate. I will. And Aria? If you change your mind, if you decide London is where you want to stay, I'll understand. I won't like it, but I'll understand. I'm coming back, 3 months. You're not getting rid of me that easily. Good. Because I have plans for us that require your presence. What kind of plans? Victor's smile was mysterious. The kind that involve permanently intertwining our lives in ways that will scandalize what's left of polite society. But we'll discuss details when you return. Aria kissed him one last time, then forced herself to walk through security without looking back. If she looked back, she might not leave. And she needed to finish this chapter properly before starting the next. London welcomed her like an old friend. Her colleagues at the hospital threw a small party. celebrating her return and congratulating her on that wild family drama we read about online. Aria accepted their teasing with good humor, grateful to be back in a place where she was Dr. DeLuca, the trauma surgeon, not Aria DeLuca, the scandalous heiress. True to his word, Victor visited. Twice in the first month, then again before Christmas. They navigated the distance with video calls and texts, long conversations about everything and nothing, the kind of intimacy that builds slowly when you can't rely on physical presence. "I miss you," Aria said one night, curled up in her London apartment while Victor sat in his office half a world away. "2 more months, then you're home. Your place or mine? Wherever you want, as long as we're together." The 3 months passed faster than expected, filled with surgeries and paperwork and the bittersweet process of saying goodbye to a city that had been her sanctuary. But by the time February arrived, Aria was ready. Ready to go home, ready to start the next chapter, ready to build the life she'd fought so hard to claim. Victor met her at the airport, and the moment she saw him, everything else fell away. He pulled her into his arms, and Aria felt the missing piece slot back into place. "Welcome home," he murmured against her hair. "I'm home," she agreed. The apartment he'd helped her find was perfect. Modern, private, close enough to several hospitals, but far enough from the DeLuca estate to maintain independence. Aria spent the first week unpacking and interviewing, eventually accepting a position at City General's trauma department based purely on her qualifications and references from London. Her first day back, she walked into the hospital with her head high, wearing scrubs instead of the designer clothes her mother had always preferred. No one cared about her family's scandal here. They cared whether she could save lives under pressure. She could. 3 weeks after her return, Victor took her to dinner at Luciano's, the same private room where they'd had their first real conversation. But this time there was no tension, no uncertainty, just comfortable intimacy and the promise of a future they'd both chosen. "I have something for you," Victor said after dessert. He pulled out a small box, and Aria's heart stopped. "Before you panic," he said with a slight smile. "This isn't a ring. I know you're not ready for that yet, but it is a promise." Inside the box was a key, simple, silver, attached to a keychain bearing the address of his house in the hills. "I want you to move in," Victor said, "not because I'm trying to control you or because I think you can't maintain your own place, but because I'm tired of splitting time between locations. I want to wake up next to you every morning, want to come home to you every night, want to build a life where together isn't something we schedule, it's just how we exist." Aria felt tears pricking her eyes. "That's a big step." "I know. And if you're not ready, I understand. The key's yours regardless. You always have a place with me, whether you live there or just visit. But Aria," his voice softened, "I'm ready. I've been ready since the moment you walked back into my life 3 months ago. So whenever you are, the door's open." She looked at the key, feeling the weight of what it represented. Commitment, vulnerability, the kind of permanent entanglement that terrified and thrilled her equally. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said finally. "Let me establish myself at the hospital, prove I can build a life here on my own terms. Then ask me again." "Deal." Victor closed her fingers around the key. "But keep this anyway. Consider it a standing invitation." 6 months later, almost to the day, Aria moved into Victor's house with 3 suitcases and a determination to make it theirs rather than his. They argued about furniture placement, compromised on kitchen organization, and discovered that living together was both easier and harder than either had expected. But it was real, messy, complicated, occasionally frustrating, but undeniably real. Marcus visited regularly, bringing groceries and terrible dad jokes, and slowly becoming the father Aria had always needed. He and Victor developed a cautious friendship built on mutual respect and shared investment in Aria's happiness. Catherine remained distant, too proud to apologize but too defeated to attack. Occasionally, Aria would see her at charity functions or social events, and they'd exchange polite nods that contained years of hurt and complicated love. Maybe someday they'd find their way back to something resembling a relationship. But not yet. A year after the court case, Aria and Victor hosted a small dinner party at the house. Elena, Marcus, Dr. Chen, a few of Victor's associates who'd become genuine friends. They sat around the dining table sharing wine and stories, and Aria felt something like peace settle over her. To Aria, Elena toasted, raising her glass, who taught us all that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is fight for the right to choose your own life. To freedom, Aria countered, and to the people who help you claim it. They drank, and Aria caught Victor's eye across the table. He smiled, soft and real, and utterly transformed from the dangerous man she'd met on that terrace a lifetime ago. After the guests left, they stood on the same terrace where they'd had that first conversation. The city lights spread below like possibilities realized. "Do you ever regret it?" Victor asked. "Burning down your family, choosing this life, tying yourself to someone like me?" Aria considered the question seriously. "I regret the pain it caused. I regret that my mother and I may never fully reconcile. I regret that it took my grandmother's death to force me into fighting for myself." She turned to face him. "But I don't regret choosing you. I don't regret claiming my freedom. And I definitely don't regret learning that I'm strong enough to withstand whatever consequences come from living authentically." "That's very diplomatic." "I'm a work in progress." She kissed him softly. "We both are. But we're progressing together, and that makes all the difference." "Together," Victor echoed, the word that had become their anchor. They stood there in the October night, almost exactly a year since they'd first met, watching the city and the stars and the future spreading out before them. Aria's grandmother had once told her not to let them tame her wild heart. She hadn't. Instead, she'd found someone wild enough to run beside her, someone strong enough to help her fight, someone honest enough to love her without trying to change her. The journey had cost them both dearly. But standing there, wrapped in Victor's arms with the whole future ahead of them, Aria knew with absolute certainty that every sacrifice had been worth it. Love hadn't saved them. They'd saved themselves. But love, messy, complicated, hard-won love, had given them a reason to keep fighting when everything else seemed impossible. And in the end, that was more than enough. 6 months later, Victor asked again. This time, Aria didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said simply, "to moving in, to building a life, to whatever comes next. Yes to all of it." They married the following spring in a simple ceremony with just close friends, and Marcus serving as Aria's escort down the aisle. Catherine wasn't invited, though Aria sent her an announcement afterward. An olive branch she wasn't sure would ever be accepted. It didn't matter. She'd learned that you can't control how others respond to your choices. You can only control the choices themselves. And Aria had chosen love over fear, freedom over control, authenticity over comfort. She'd chosen herself. And in doing so, she'd found everything she'd been fighting for. The story that began with grief and suffocation ended with hope and possibility. Not a fairy tale ending where everything was perfect, but something better. A real ending where two damaged people found healing and honesty and strength in choosing each other despite every reason not to. Years later, when people asked Aria about the scandal, about falling in love with Victor Romano, about destroying her family's reputation to claim her freedom, she'd smile and say simply, "I chose the life I could live with. Everything else was just noise." And it was true. In the end, that's all any of them had done, chosen the lives they could live with, accepted the consequences, and found their way to something real in a world built on careful fictions. It wasn't the ending anyone would have predicted when Aria stood on that terrace at her grandmother's memorial, suffocating under expectations and grief. But it was the ending she'd fought for, and that made it perfect.